A single father sits quietly in an airport cafe, his exhausted daughter asleep against his shoulder after another brutal hospital stay. A polished businesswoman towers over him, demanding he leave the business section, convinced he doesn't belong. She sees worn clothes, tired eyes, a man who clearly can't afford to be there. What she doesn't see could shatter everything she believes about success, worth, and what truly matters. Sometimes the people we dismiss hold more power than we'll ever know. Sometimes a single conversation can expose who we really are. Hit like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Terminal C buzzed with that particular frequency that made Adrian Blake's head throb. He'd been awake for 36 hours straight, and the coffee he'd forced down an hour ago sat like battery acid in his empty stomach. Sophie's weight against his chest was the only thing keeping him tethered to something real, something that mattered beyond the exhaustion that had become his permanent state of being. She was finally sleeping. Actually sleeping. Not that fitful, half-conscious state she'd been trapped in for the last week. Her small fingers clutched the fabric of his jacket, the same jacket he'd worn to 3 business meetings, 2 hospital consultations, and now this godforsaken airport. It smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee, and probably looked worse than it smelled, but Sophie didn't care. She never cared about things like that. Adrian shifted slightly, trying to ease the cramp in his shoulder without waking her. The business lounge section of the cafe wasn't technically restricted, just understood. Plush chairs, outlets at every table, slightly better lighting than the main terminal. He'd chosen a corner seat deliberately, somewhere Sophie could rest properly while they waited for their delayed flight. The announcement board flickered. Another hour delay. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, doing the mental math he'd done 1,000 times. If they made the connection in Chicago, they'd be home by midnight. Sophie had school tomorrow. Well, she had online classes, since regular school had become impossible with her treatment schedule. He'd need to prep her assignments, schedule her next appointment, follow up with Dr. Morrison about the latest test results that he absolutely was not going to think about right now. "Excuse me," the voice cut through his thoughts like a knife through water. Sharp, precise, the kind of voice that expected immediate compliance. Adrian opened his eyes. The woman standing beside his table looked like she'd stepped out of a corporate magazine spread. Mid-20s, maybe, with dark hair pulled back so severely it made Adrian's scalp hurt just looking at it. Her suit probably cost more than his monthly mortgage. Everything about her screamed success, the kind of polished, aggressive success that left marks. "Yes?" Adrian kept his voice low. Sophie stirred slightly against him. "This section is for business class passengers." She didn't ask. She stated. Her eyes flicked over him, the worn jacket, the scuffed shoes, the general air of someone who'd been living in hospitals for the better part of 3 months. "I'm going to need you to move." Adrian blinked at her slowly. He was too tired for this. Too tired for everything, really, but especially this. "I have a ticket," he said quietly. "I'm sure you do." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "But this area is specifically for passengers who've purchased premium seating. If you'd like to upgrade..." "I'm not moving my daughter." The words came out harder than he'd intended. Sophie made a small sound, and Adrian immediately softened his voice, running his hand over her hair. "She's sleeping. We're not bothering anyone." The woman's expression shifted, not quite to anger, but something close. Irritation, maybe. The kind of irritation that came from having your authority questioned by someone you'd already dismissed. "Sir, I don't think you understand. This isn't a request." She gestured vaguely toward the main terminal. "There's plenty of seating out there. This area is reserved for people who pay for the privilege." "I heard you the first time." Adrian met her gaze steadily. "And I told you, I'm not moving her. She just fell asleep 20 minutes ago. She hasn't slept properly in a week. So unless you're planning to physically remove us, we're staying." Something flickered across the woman's face. Surprise, maybe, that he wasn't immediately backing down. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "I could call security." "You could?" Adrian kept his hand moving gently through Sophie's hair. "That would definitely create a scene. Wake up my daughter. Make everyone in this cafe uncomfortable. All because you can't tolerate someone sitting in a chair that's currently empty anyway." The woman's jaw tightened. "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" "The point is rules, structure. These sections exist for a reason. To separate people who can afford comfort from people who can't. To provide value for premium customers. Her voice had an edge now. If everyone could just sit wherever they wanted, what would be the point of offering different service levels? Adrian almost laughed. Almost. The absurdity of having this conversation while his daughter slept against him, while they were both running on empty, while the latest medical bills sat in his email inbox like ticking time bombs. It was too much. "You're right," he said finally. "That would be terrible. Imagine if people were just treated like people, regardless of what they paid." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Is that supposed to be profound?" "It's supposed to be common sense." "What's your name?" She pulled out her phone, fingers already moving across the screen. "I'm filing a complaint with Chloe." A man's voice interrupted them. Adrian looked up to see another business type approaching. Older, expensive watch, the kind of casual confidence that came from never having been told no. The woman, Chloe, apparently, turned. "Marcus, I'm handling... You're making a scene." Marcus's voice was low but firm. He glanced at Adrian, at Sophie, then back at Chloe. "Let it go." "He's sitting in the business section without..." "I don't care." Marcus's expression didn't change. "We board in 40 minutes. Find something else to do with your energy." Chloe's face flushed. For a moment, Adrian thought she might actually argue with this Marcus person, but then her shoulders straightened and she turned back to Adrian with a look that could freeze water. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "I think it is." Adrian kept his voice even. "But thank you for your concern about seating arrangements. Really warms the heart." She left without another word, heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. Marcus gave Adrian a small nod, not quite apologetic, just acknowledging, and followed her. Sophie shifted against Adrian's chest. "Daddy?" "Hey, sweetheart." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Go back to sleep. We've still got time." "Was that lady mad at us?" "That lady was having a bad day." "Like when I get grumpy after treatments?" Adrian's chest tightened. "Yeah, like that." Sophie yawned, already drifting again. "You should tell her it gets better. That's what you always tell me." "I don't think she'd listen, Soph." "You should try anyway. You're good at making people feel better." She was asleep again before Adrian could respond. He sat there, holding her, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing against his ribs. Good at making people feel better. If only that were true. If only he could make her better, actually better, not just comfortable between rounds of treatment that left her hollowed out and exhausted. His phone buzzed. Email notification. Adrian glanced at it automatically, then wished he hadn't. Dr. Morrison. Subject line, latest results. We should talk. Adrian closed his eyes and focused on breathing. In, out. Sophie's weight against him, the buzz of the fluorescent lights, the distant announcement of boarding for a flight to somewhere else. We should talk never meant good news. "Excuse me?" Adrian's eyes snapped open. A different woman this time, older, wearing a cafe uniform. She had kind eyes and was holding a paper cup. "I saw what happened," she said quietly. "Thought you might need this. On the house." She set the cup down on the table. "Hot chocolate. The good kind with actual whipped cream." "I can't." "Yes, you can." She smiled. "Your daughter looks like she could use something sweet when she wakes up, and you look like you could use about 3 days of sleep, but I figure the chocolate's more realistic." Adrian felt something crack in his chest. "Thank you." "You're welcome. And for what it's worth?" She glanced in the direction Chloe had gone. "That girl needs someone to remind her what actually matters." "Maybe you just did." She left before Adrian could respond. He looked down at the hot chocolate, at Sophie sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, at the email notification still glowing on his phone screen. What actually matters? He picked up the cup and took a sip. It was perfect. Of course it was. The boarding announcement came 45 minutes later. Adrian woke Sophie gently, helped her into her backpack, gathered their scattered belongings. The hot chocolate had gone cold, but Sophie had smiled when she saw it, and that was worth more than any upgrade to business class. They were halfway to the gate when Adrian heard rapid footsteps behind them. "Wait, please wait." He turned. Chloe was hurrying toward them, her polished composure slightly cracked. She looked younger up close, Adrian realized. Younger and more uncertain than she'd seemed in the cafe. "Can I help you?" Adrian kept his voice neutral. Chloe stopped a few feet away, slightly breathless. I wanted to... She paused, glancing at Sophie, then back at Adrian. I wanted to apologize for earlier. I was out of line. Adrian studied her. The apology seemed genuine, but there was something else in her expression. Curiosity, maybe. Or confusion. Apology accepted, he said simply. Chloe hesitated again. Marcus told me I should let it go, but I can't stop thinking about what you said, about treating people like people. It wasn't that complicated. It should be simple, but it isn't, is it? She looked directly at him now. Can I ask you something? Adrian glanced at the departure board. They still had time. Go ahead. Why didn't you just tell me you had a business class ticket? You do, don't you? You could have ended the whole thing immediately. Would it have mattered? Of course it would have. Chloe stopped, frowned. Actually, I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't have. That's why I didn't mention it. Adrian shifted Sophie's backpack on his shoulder. The problem wasn't whether I had the right ticket. The problem was that you decided I didn't belong based on how I looked. Chloe's face flushed. I made an assumption. You did? I'm not usually... She stopped again, shook her head. No, that's a lie. I do this all the time, categorize people, decide who matters based on, I don't even know what, success markers, appearance, confidence. Most people do, Adrian said quietly. You're just more honest about it than most. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to be the truth. Adrian glanced down at Sophie, who was watching the exchange with tired interest. Look, I appreciate the apology. I do. But we have a flight to catch. Right, of course. Chloe stepped back, then paused. Can I ask one more thing? Adrian waited. Your daughter, is she okay? I noticed. Chloe gestured vaguely. She seems tired. More than just travel tired. Sophie looked up at Adrian. He could see the question in her eyes. How much do we tell her? She's been sick, Adrian said carefully. We've been dealing with it. That's why I was protective about her sleep. I'm sorry. I didn't know. You couldn't have known. Adrian managed a small smile. But thank you for asking. Chloe nodded slowly. She looked like she wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. Finally, she just said, I hope she feels better soon. Me too. They left her standing there, a polished statue in the middle of the terminal. Adrian didn't look back. He'd learned a long time ago that looking back just made everything harder. The flight was delayed another hour, then another. By the time they finally boarded, Sophie was running on pure exhaustion and Adrian wasn't far behind. They found their seats, actual business class, because Adrian had learned that some comforts were worth the extra cost when your child couldn't sleep sitting upright, and settled in. Sophie fell asleep before takeoff. Adrian tried to do the same, but his brain wouldn't stop spinning. Dr. Morrison's email. The bills waiting at home, Sophie's upcoming treatment schedule, the look on Chloe's face when she'd apologized. He pulled out his phone, stared at the email notification for a long moment, then opened it. Adrian, the latest results show some concerning markers. Nothing immediately alarming, but I'd like to discuss adjusting Sophie's treatment protocol. Can you come in Friday morning? I know that's short notice, but I think we should address this sooner rather than later. Dr. Morrison. Adrian read it twice. 3 times. Concerning markers, adjust treatment protocol. Sooner rather than later. He closed his eyes and tried to breathe through the panic that was always there, just beneath the surface, waiting for moments like this. Sir? Adrian looked up. The flight attendant was standing in the aisle, holding a blanket. For your daughter, she said quietly. And there's an extra one if you need it. Thank you. She placed both blankets on the empty seat beside him, gave him a small smile, and moved on. Adrian tucked one around Sophie, watching her face relax into deeper sleep. She looked so small, so fragile, so much stronger than anyone gave her credit for. He pulled out his phone again and typed a response to Dr. Morrison. Friday works. 9 a.m.? The response came almost immediately. Perfect. See you then. Adrian put the phone away and stared out the window at the dark tarmac. Somewhere out there, Chloe was probably boarding her own flight, going back to her polished life, already forgetting about the tired man and his sick daughter in the airport cafe. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting Sophie home, getting through Friday's appointment, figuring out whatever came next. The plane started moving. Sophie stirred slightly but didn't wake. Adrian covered himself with the second blanket and let his eyes close, knowing sleep wouldn't come, but hoping anyway. It had been 3 years since Emily died. 3 years of doing this alone, of figuring out insurance and medical bills, and how to be both mother and father to a child who needed more than any one person could give. 3 years of Sophie being brave when she shouldn't have to be, of smiling through pain, of asking Adrian if he was okay when she was the one hooked up to IVs. 3 years of people like Chloe looking at them and seeing something less than, something not quite right, something that didn't belong in the business section of an airport cafe. Adrian had stopped caring what people thought a long time ago. He cared about Sophie. He cared about making it to Friday's appointment. He cared about finding a way through whatever concerning markers Dr. Morrison wanted to discuss. Everything else was just noise. The plane lifted off the ground. Sophie's hand found his, gripping tight even in sleep. Adrian held on and watched Chicago disappear beneath the clouds, wondering what waited for them on the other side of Friday, on the other side of whatever came next. In the row behind them, someone was typing frantically on a laptop. Ahead, a couple argued quietly about luggage space. The flight attendants went through their safety demonstration that no one watched. Normal life. Regular problems. The kind of concerns that would have consumed Adrian once, before he learned what actually mattered, before he learned that everything could change in a single diagnosis, that comfort was a lie, that the only thing separating any of them from losing everything was luck and time. Sophie's breathing evened out. Adrian closed his eyes and tried to find that place where sleep lived, where worry couldn't follow, where Friday's appointment didn't exist yet. He almost made it. They landed at midnight. The terminal was nearly empty, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. Sophie walked slowly, leaning against Adrian, and he carried both their bags without complaint. His shoulder screamed in protest, but he ignored it. This was just what you did. This was parenthood distilled to its most basic form. You carried what needed carrying, you kept moving. You didn't let them see how close you were to falling apart. The parking garage was cold. Their car sat exactly where Adrian had left it 4 days ago, covered in a thin layer of dust that seemed symbolic of something he was too tired to analyze. He got Sophie settled in the back seat, buckled in with her favorite blanket, and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment before starting the engine. His phone buzzed. Text message from his sister. "You land okay? Sophie doing all right?" Adrian typed back one-handed. "Home safe. She's sleeping. Talk tomorrow. Love you both. Get some rest. You too." He put the phone down and started the car. The garage was quiet except for the engine's rumble and the distant sound of a plane taking off, going somewhere else, taking someone else's problems to someone else's destination. The drive home took 30 minutes. Sophie woke up twice, asked where they were, fell back asleep before Adrian could answer. He drove on autopilot, muscle memory guiding him through streets he'd driven 1,000 times. Their house was dark when they pulled up. Adrian had left the porch light on, but it had burned out while they were gone. Another thing to fix. Another item on the endless list of things that needed doing. He carried Sophie inside, got her into bed without fully waking her, stood in her doorway for a long moment just watching her breathe. The nightlight cast shadows across her face, too thin, too pale, but still his Sophie. Still fighting, still here. Adrian's phone buzzed again as he headed to his own room. Another email. He almost ignored it, but the sender name caught his attention. Children's Hospital Foundation. He opened it, scanned the message quickly. A donor acknowledgement. Something about the annual fund reaching its goal. A thank you for his contribution. Adrian deleted it without finishing. The foundation work was separate, private. Something he did because it needed doing, not because he wanted recognition for it. Emily had believed in giving back. After she died, Adrian had made it his mission to continue that, quietly, anonymously, through trusts and foundations that didn't carry his name. It was the one piece of his old life he'd held on to. Before Sophie's diagnosis, before the medical bills, before everything changed, Adrian had been successful in the traditional sense. Built a company, sold it, made enough money to do something meaningful with it. Then Emily got sick, then Sophie got sick. Then suddenly all that success meant nothing except that he could afford the kind of care most families couldn't. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. But Adrian had stopped expecting fairness around the same time he'd stopped sleeping through the night. He changed into old sweatpants, brushed his teeth, stared at himself in the bathroom mirror. The man looking back was 42 but looked 50. Gray threading through his hair, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. The permanent exhaustion that came from 3 years of constant worry. But Sophie was sleeping safely in the next room. They'd made it home. Friday's appointment was days away. It might as well be years away right now. Adrian turned off the bathroom light and fell into bed still thinking about Chloe's face when she'd apologized, about the cafe worker who'd brought hot chocolate, about the flight attendant with the extra blankets. Small kindnesses in a world that didn't require them. He fell asleep thinking about Emily, about how she'd handled people like Chloe. With grace he'd never managed to master. With compassion he struggled to feel when he was this tired. She would have forgiven Chloe immediately. Would have probably invited her to sit down, offered to share Sophie's hot chocolate, turned the whole encounter into a teaching moment. Adrian had just been irritated, just wanted to be left alone, just wanted his daughter to sleep. Maybe that made him a worse person than Emily. Maybe that made him exactly the kind of cynical, worn-down single parent everyone pitied. He was too tired to care about the answer. Friday came too quickly. Adrian woke up at 5:30, couldn't fall back asleep, gave up at 6 and made coffee. Sophie found him in the kitchen at 7, already dressed, already trying to be brave about an appointment she knew meant needles and questions and probably bad news. "Morning, Dad." "Morning, sweetheart. Want pancakes?" "Not really hungry." "I'll make them anyway. You can take a few bites." They went through the motions, pancakes that Sophie picked at. Orange juice she drank to make Adrian happy. The drive to the hospital that they'd done so many times, Adrian could do it in his sleep. Dr. Morrison's office was on the 3rd floor. They checked in at 8:50, sat in the waiting room with 3 other families, all wearing the same expression of carefully controlled terror. "Adrian Blake?" They followed the nurse back. Vitals. Weight check. Sophie's small hand in Adrian's the entire time. Dr. Morrison knocked once and entered, tablet in hand, kind eyes that had delivered too much bad news over the years. "Sophie, Adrian, good to see you both." "Doc." Adrian kept his voice steady. "What are we looking at?" Dr. Morrison sat down, pulled up charts on her tablet. "The markers I mentioned show Sophie's current treatment isn't maintaining the progress we want. I'm recommending we switch to a more aggressive protocol." She continued talking. Adrian heard about half of it. The important parts filtered through. More aggressive treatment, stronger medication, additional monitoring, higher risk of side effects. Also, better chance of actual remission. "What are we talking about in terms of timeline?" Adrian heard himself ask. "We'd start next week. Initial round would be intense, probably 2 weeks inpatient, then ongoing outpatient for 6 months. Sophie's hand tightened in Adrian's. He squeezed back gently. "What's the success rate?" 65% achieve full remission within a year. "And the other 35%? Dr. Morrison's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. "We cross that bridge if we come to it. But Adrian, I've seen Sophie fight through everything we've thrown at her. I like our odds." Adrian looked at his daughter, 9 years old, should be worrying about homework and friends and what to watch on TV. Instead, she was sitting in an oncologist's office, listening to adults discuss her survival chances like they were discussing weather patterns. "Sophie?" Adrian kept his voice gentle. "What do you think?" She looked up at him with Emily's eyes. "Will it make me better? Really better?" "Dr. Morrison thinks it will." "Then we should do it." Sophie's voice was small but certain. "I'm tired of being sick, Dad." Adrian's chest cracked open. "I know, baby. I know." They spent another hour going over details, treatment schedules, medication lists, side effect management. Adrian took notes he'd never look at again because everything important was already burned into his brain. They were walking back to the car when Sophie spoke again. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" Adrian stopped walking, knelt down so they were eye level. "Yes, we're going to be okay." "You promise?" He couldn't promise. He had no control over cancer cells and treatment protocols and whether Sophie's body would respond the way they needed it to. But she was 9 and scared and looking at him like he could fix anything. I promise to fight like hell to make sure we are, Adrian said. That good enough? Sophie considered this, nodded. Yeah, that's good enough. They drove home in comfortable silence. Adrian's mind was already spinning through logistics. He'd need to arrange extended leave from work, actual leave this time, not just the patchwork of remote days and emergency absences he'd been managing. He'd need to talk to Sophie's school about the extended absence, call his sister, update insurance, about 1,000 other things that all felt impossible and necessary at the same time. But first, they were going to go home. He was going to make Sophie her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with the good breadcrumbs, not the boxed kind. They were going to watch whatever movie she wanted. They were going to pretend for just a few hours that everything was normal. Adrian's phone rang as they pulled into the driveway. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Adrian Blake? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. Speaking. This is Rebecca Chen from Children's Hospital Foundation. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Adrian glanced at Sophie, who was already unbuckling her seatbelt. I have a few minutes. What's this about? We're planning our annual donor recognition event next month, and we wanted to extend a personal invitation. Your contributions over the past 3 years have been extraordinary, and we'd love to acknowledge. I appreciate the call, but I'm not interested in recognition events. Adrian kept his voice polite but firm. The donations are anonymous for a reason. I understand completely, and we absolutely respect that. But I wanted you to know that your foundation's work has impacted over 200 families this year alone. The treatment fund you established is meant to help families who need it. That's all the impact I need to know about. There was a pause. Then Rebecca's voice, softer now. You're one of the good ones, Mr. Blake. I'm just a parent who got lucky enough to afford what others can't. Doesn't make me good. Makes me responsible. Well, the offer stands if you change your mind. And Mr. Blake, thank you for everything you've done. Adrian ended the call and sat in the car for a moment, watching Sophie skip up to the front door despite everything she'd just heard at the hospital. Resilient, brave, better than him in every way that mattered. The money didn't make him special. It just meant he had the resources to do what any parent would do if they could, help other kids fighting the same fight. He followed Sophie inside, determined to make this Friday afternoon count, determined to give her a few hours where cancer wasn't the main character in their story. They made it about 2 hours before reality crashed back in. Word count, 5,243. I need to continue and complete this to reach the target, 6,500 to 7,000 words. Let me continue the story. The doorbell rang just as Adrian was pulling the mac and cheese out of the oven. I'll get it, Sophie called, already heading for the door. Check the peephole first, Adrian called back automatically. I know, Dad. Adrian set the casserole dish on the counter and listened for Sophie's reaction. He heard the door open, heard her confused, hello? And then nothing. He walked into the living room to find Sophie staring at a woman on their doorstep. A woman Adrian recognized instantly, though she looked completely different from the last time he'd seen her. Chloe Bennett stood on his front porch wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back in that severe style. She looked younger, more uncertain, human in a way she hadn't in the airport. Mr. Blake, she said. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I tried calling, but I think I had the wrong number, and then I found your address through work connections, which sounds creepy now that I say it out loud, but I promise I'm not some kind of stalker. She stopped, took a breath. I owe you a real apology, and I wanted to deliver it in person. Adrian stared at her. Sophie looked between them, clearly lost. Dad? Do you know this lady? We met at the airport, Adrian said slowly. Sophie, go wash up for dinner. I'll be right there. Sophie hesitated, then headed toward the bathroom. Adrian stepped outside and closed the door behind him. How did you find me? His voice wasn't angry, just tired. I work in venture capital. We have resources for background research, and Chloe stopped at his expression. That sounds worse than it is. I wasn't trying to invade your privacy. I just couldn't stop thinking about what happened at the airport, and then I did some digging and found out. She stopped again. You're Adrian Blake. as in Blake Medical Trust, as in the foundation that's funded half the pediatric research at Children's Hospital for the past 3 years. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. So, you know. The man I tried to kick out of an airport cafe has personally funded treatment for hundreds of sick kids, including programs that, her voice caught. My cousin's daughter is alive because of a treatment program your foundation paid for. Experimental protocol that insurance wouldn't cover. Your money saved her life. I'm glad she's doing better. You don't understand. Chloe's eyes were bright. I spent the whole flight home that night thinking about what an entitled ass I'd been, how I judged you based on nothing but appearances. And then I found out who you really are, and I realized I wasn't just wrong, I was monstrously wrong. You weren't wrong. You were just seeing what everyone sees. Adrian leaned against the porch railing. A tired single dad in a worn jacket. That's what I am. No, you're someone who lost his wife, and instead of falling apart, built something that helps families like yours. You're someone who could have made your donations public, gotten recognition, built a reputation, but you kept it anonymous because it was never about you. It was never about me because it's not special. Adrian's voice hardened slightly. Any parent with resources would do the same. I'm not some saint. I'm just someone who can afford to help, so I do. That's exactly what makes it special. Chloe took a step closer. Most people with money just hoard it. Build bigger houses, buy fancy cars, you're using it to save lives. While my own daughter is still sick. The words came out sharper than Adrian intended. While I'm standing here talking to you instead of figuring out how to pay for her new treatment protocol because insurance doesn't cover experimental therapies even when they're the best option. So forgive me if I don't feel particularly heroic right now. Chloe's expression shifted. Sophie's sick? Brain tumor, 3 years and counting. Just found out today her current treatment isn't working, so we're switching to something more aggressive. Adrian heard himself saying it and couldn't stop. 65% success rate, which sounds good until you remember that's 35% failure rate, and every parent thinks their kid won't be in that 35%, but somebody's kid has to be. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Why would you? Adrian pushed off the railing. Look, I appreciate you coming here. I accept your apology, but I've had a really long day and my daughter is waiting for dinner, so let me help. Adrian stopped. What? Let me help with Sophie's treatment. I work with medical startups. I know people, doctors, researchers, pharmaceutical companies developing new protocols. Let me make some calls, see what's available beyond what your doctors are recommending. I have good doctors. I'm sure you do, but more options never hurt. Chloe pulled out her phone. Give me until Monday. Let me reach out to my network, see what I can find out. If nothing useful comes up, you never have to talk to me again. But if I can help, why? Adrian searched her face. Why do you care? Chloe met his gaze steadily. Because when I met you at the airport, I saw someone I thought I understood. Someone I categorized and dismissed in about 30 seconds. And I was completely wrong. And maybe if I help you now, it'll make up for about 1% of how awful I was then. You weren't that awful. I tried to get you thrown out of a cafe while your daughter was sleeping after she'd spent days in the hospital. Yeah, I was pretty awful. Chloe's voice softened. Let me try to do better, please. Adrian wanted to say no, wanted to close the door on this weird connection, keep his family's struggles private like he always had. But something in Chloe's expression stopped him. Genuine regret mixed with determination. The kind of look someone wore when they were trying to become better than they'd been. And maybe, just maybe, she could actually help. Monday, Adrian said finally. Call me Monday. If you find something useful, we'll talk. Chloe's face lit up. Thank you. Really, I won't let you down. She was halfway down the porch steps when Adrian called after her. Chloe? She turned back. That thing you said about categorizing people in 30 seconds? I do it too. Saw you in the airport and decided you were just another corporate type who cared more about status than people. So we were both wrong about each other. Chloe smiled slightly. Maybe we should both work on that. Maybe we should. She left, and Adrian stood on the porch for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Then Sophie's voice drifted from inside. Dad, the mac and cheese is getting cold. He went back inside to find Sophie already at the table, looking at him with those two knowing eyes. Was that the lady from the airport? Yeah? Is she still mad at us? No, actually, I think she's trying to help us. Sophie considered this while twirling pasta around her fork. That's nice. People don't usually help us. Mostly they just feel sorry for us. Adrian sat down across from her. How do you know the difference? Helping is when they do something. Sorry is when they just say things. Sophie took a bite of mac and cheese. This is really good, Dad. Thanks, sweetheart. They ate in comfortable silence. Adrian watched his daughter, this small, brave person who'd somehow learned to distinguish between genuine help and empty sympathy at 9 years old, who faced down cancer with more grace than most adults could manage, who made him want to be better than he was. Later that night, after Sophie was asleep, Adrian sat in his home office and stared at the email from Dr. Morrison with the treatment plan attached. 65%. Better odds than some families got. Worse than others. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Chloe. Got your number from the hospital foundation. Sorry again for the stalker vibes. Already reached out to 3 colleagues in pharma research. We'll have info by Monday. Get some rest. Adrian stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Thank you. Really, that's what friends do. And I'd like to think we're friends now, or at least working on it. Friends. Adrian almost laughed. He barely remembered how to have friends. The last 3 years had been about survival, not socializing. Most of his old friendships had faded, not from malice, just from the reality that people without sick kids couldn't fully understand people with them. But maybe Chloe could be different. Maybe this strange connection that started with conflict could turn into something useful, something real. He closed his laptop and headed upstairs. Checked on Sophie one more time. A ritual he'd performed every night for 3 years, just to make sure she was still breathing, still there, still his. She was curled up with her favorite stuffed elephant, the one Emily had bought her 4th birthday, 3 months before the diagnosis, back when their biggest worry was whether Sophie would like preschool. Adrian pulled her blanket up slightly and pressed a kiss to her forehead. Love you, Soph, he whispered. We're going to get through this. I promise. He didn't know if he was lying. Didn't know if promises meant anything against cancer cells and treatment failures and 65% success rates. But he meant it anyway. Monday morning arrived wrapped in gray clouds and the kind of cold rain that made everything feel harder than it needed to be. Adrian woke at 5:30 to the sound of his alarm and Sophie coughing in the next room, the wet, rattling kind that meant her immune system was already struggling before they'd even started the new treatment. He found her sitting up in bed looking small and miserable. Hey, sweetheart. How long have you been awake? I don't know. A while. Sophie wiped her nose with the back of her hand. My throat hurts. Adrian pressed his palm to her forehead. Warm, but not dangerously so. Scale of 1 to 10. Maybe a 6? Which meant it was probably an 8 because Sophie had learned to downplay her pain to avoid worrying him. Adrian made a mental note to call Dr. Morrison if it wasn't better by noon. All right, let's get some medicine in you, then you can rest while I make breakfast. I have class at 9. Class can wait. Your teacher will understand. Sophie's expression crumpled slightly. I'm going to fall behind again. You're not going to fall behind. We'll catch up. We always do. But even as he said it, Adrian knew the words rang hollow. They'd been catching up for 3 years now. Sophie's education was a patchwork of online classes, missed assignments, and understanding teachers who bent rules because what else could they do when a kid was fighting cancer? He got her settled with medicine and juice, then went downstairs to find his phone already buzzing with messages. 2 from his sister asking how Friday's appointment went. 1 from work about a project deadline he'd completely forgotten about, and 1 from Chloe, sent at 6:45 that morning. Found something. Can I call you? Adrian stared at the message. It had been less than 72 hours since she'd shown up on his porch. He hadn't really expected her to follow through. People said they'd help all the time, then disappeared when they realized how messy and complicated helping actually was. He called her back. She answered on the first ring. Adrian, thanks for calling back so fast. You said you found something. Right. Okay. So I talked to a colleague who works with a pharmaceutical company developing targeted immunotherapy for pediatric brain tumors. They're running a clinical trial that just entered phase 2, and they're actively recruiting patients who fit specific criteria. Adrian's grip tightened on the phone. What criteria? I'm texting you the research coordinator's contact info right now. But from what I understand, Sophie's type of tumor and her treatment history might make her a good candidate. The success rates in phase 1 were significantly higher than traditional protocols. How much higher? 82% showed significant tumor reduction or complete remission within 6 months. Adrian sat down hard in the kitchen chair. 82%, compared to the 65% Dr. Morrison had quoted? What's the catch? Because there was always a catch. It's experimental, not FDA approved yet. Some side effects they're still monitoring. And it's at a research hospital in Boston, so you'd need to relocate for the initial treatment phase, probably 6 to 8 weeks. Boston, across the country, away from Dr. Morrison, away from their home, away from everything familiar. I can't just pick up and move to Boston. I know it's a lot, but Adrian, the research is really promising. And my colleague says the lead researcher, Dr. Patricia Chen, is one of the best in the field. She's seen things that traditional oncology said were impossible. Adrian closed his eyes. 82%, 6 to 8 weeks. A chance at something better than what they had. Send me the information. I'll talk to Dr. Morrison, see what she thinks. Already done. Check your email. Adrian pulled up his inbox and found a detailed message from Chloe with research papers, contact information, and a personal note from her colleague vouching for the program. This is, Adrian's voice caught. This is more than I expected. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Just promise you'll seriously consider it. I will. And Adrian, if you decide to do it, if you need help with logistics or housing in Boston or anything, I have connections there. I can make things easier. Why are you doing this? The question came out before Adrian could stop it. You don't owe me anything. Chloe was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. My cousin's daughter, the one I mentioned, she died last year. The treatment bought her 3 extra years, but it wasn't enough in the end. And I keep thinking about how my cousin said those 3 years were everything. Birthday parties, school plays, just normal life. Your foundation gave them that. I'm sorry about your cousin's daughter. Me too. But the point is, I watched my cousin go through what you're going through, and I saw how alone she felt, even with family around, how hard it was to navigate the medical system while being terrified and exhausted. So if I can make any part of this easier for you and Sophie, I'm going to do it. Adrian heard Sophie coughing upstairs. I need to go check on her. Of course. Call me after you talk to Dr. Morrison? Yeah, I will. He ended the call and sat there for a long moment, staring at the research papers Chloe had sent. Targeted immunotherapy. Phase 2 trials. Dr. Patricia Chen. Boston. 82%. Sophie appeared in the doorway, wrapped in her blanket like a small ghost. Who were you talking to? Chloe, the woman from the other night. What did she want? She might have found a new treatment option for you. In Boston. Sophie's eyes widened. Boston? Like Massachusetts, Boston. Yeah. Would we have to move there? Maybe, for a little while, if we decide to do it. Adrian pulled Sophie onto his lap, careful of her sore throat. What do you think about that? Sophie was quiet, processing. Then, would it work better than what Dr. Morrison wants to do? Maybe. I don't know yet. I need to do more research. But you think it might? Adrian chose his words carefully. I think it's worth looking into. But it's a big decision. We'd have to leave home for weeks, maybe months. You'd be away from your stuff, your room, everything familiar. But I might get better, really better. That's what the research suggests. But Sophie, you need to understand, I want to do it. Her voice was suddenly fierce. I don't care about my room or my stuff. I care about not being sick anymore. I'm tired of being sick, Dad. I'm so tired. Adrian held her tighter, feeling her small body shake slightly. 9 years old and already exhausted by life in ways no child should be. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. Okay, he said quietly. Let me talk to Dr. Morrison. We'll figure this out together. Promise we'll at least try. I promise we'll seriously consider it. That's the best I can do right now. Sophie nodded against his chest. That's good enough. Dr. Morrison called back within 2 hours of Adrian's message. She'd reviewed the research papers, talked to a colleague who knew Dr. Chen and had thoughts. It's legitimate, she said without preamble. The results from phase 1 were genuinely impressive. But Adrian, you need to understand what you'd be signing up for. Tell me. The trial is intensive. Weekly treatments, constant monitoring, potential side effects we haven't seen with traditional therapy. And because it's experimental, insurance won't cover it. The trial covers the treatment itself, but housing, travel, additional medical care if complications arise, that's all out of pocket. How much are we talking? Conservatively, probably 60 to 80,000 for 6 to 8 weeks in Boston. More if there are complications. Adrian did the math in his head. He had it. Between Emily's life insurance and the sale of his company, he had enough to cover it and then some. But it would eat through his reserves faster than he'd planned. What would you do? Adrian asked. If Sophie were your daughter? Dr. Morrison sighed. That's not a fair question. I know, but I'm asking anyway. If she were my daughter and I had the resources to try something with an 82% success rate instead of 65%, she paused. I'd be on the next plane to Boston. Even with the unknowns? Especially with the unknowns. Because the known isn't working, Adrian. Sophie's current treatment is failing. My protocol is better than nothing, but it's not as good as what Dr. Chen is offering. Adrian leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. So you think we should do it? I think you should seriously consider it. And if you decide to go, I'll help coordinate with Dr. Chen's team. I'll send Sophie's complete medical history, treatment records, everything they need to evaluate her candidacy. How soon would we need to decide? The trial is filling up fast. Dr. Chen is only taking 20 more patients this round. I'd say you have maybe 2 weeks before the spots are gone. 2 weeks to decide whether to upend their entire lives on the chance, the hope, that experimental treatment in a city 3,000 miles away might save his daughter's life. Okay, Adrian said. Start sending the records. I'll talk to Sophie, figure out logistics, and let you know by Friday. Good. And Adrian, I know this is overwhelming, but you're doing the right thing by considering all the options. After the call ended, Adrian sat in his office for a long time thinking about Emily. She'd been the decisive one in their relationship. Saw a problem, weighed the options, made a choice, and stuck with it. Adrian had always been more cautious, wanting to consider every angle before committing. But Emily wasn't here to make this decision. It was just him and Sophie and a ticking clock. His phone rang. Chloe again. Did you talk to Dr. Morrison? She thinks we should do it. Good. So do I. Chloe's voice shifted into business mode. I've already started looking into housing options near the research hospital. There's a residential hotel that caters to medical families, fully furnished apartments, weekly rates, close to the hospital. I can get you a corporate discount through my company. Chloe, you don't need to. I know I don't need to. I want to. Let me do this. She paused. Unless you'd prefer to handle it yourself? I don't want to overstep. Adrian thought about all the logistics he'd need to manage in the next 2 weeks. Work arrangements, travel plans, packing up their lives, finding housing, coordinating with Dr. Chen's team. Corporate discount would be helpful, he said finally. Done. I'll send you options by tonight. Also, I have a friend who's a real estate attorney in Boston. If you need any legal help with lease agreements or anything, she owes me a favor. You have friends everywhere, don't you? Comes with the job. Network or die. Then softer. But this isn't about networking. This is about helping Sophie. I know, and I appreciate it. Really. So you're doing it? You're going to Boston? Adrian looked out the window at the gray sky, the rain that hadn't stopped since morning. Somewhere across the country, Dr. Patricia Chen was running a trial that might save his daughter's life. Somewhere out there was hope that looked better than what they had here. Yeah, he said. We're going to Boston. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Adrian took emergency leave from work. His boss was understanding, but Adrian could hear the unspoken concern about how long he'd been absent over the past 3 years. His job was secure for now, but it wouldn't be forever. He told Sophie about the decision over breakfast on Tuesday. She'd taken it better than he'd expected, immediately starting to plan what stuffed animals she'd bring and whether they could visit the aquarium if she felt well enough. What about school? She'd asked. We'll figure it out. Maybe online classes, maybe the hospital has a school program. We'll make it work. His sister had been less enthusiastic about the plan. Boston? Rachel's voice over the phone was sharp with worry. Adrian, that's so far. What if something goes wrong? What if you need help? Then we'll handle it, same way we handle everything else. By yourself, always by yourself. Rachel's frustration bled through. I'm your sister. Let me help. I can come with you, stay for a few weeks. You have a job, a family, your own life. And you're my brother. Sophie's my niece. We're family. Adrian closed his eyes. I know, but Rach, this is something I need to do. Just us. Sophie needs stability, not a crowd of people hovering. Fine. But I'm visiting, at least twice. And you're calling me every other day with updates. Deal. Chloe had followed through on everything she'd promised. By Wednesday, Adrian had 3 housing options to choose from. He'd picked a 2-bedroom apartment in the medical residential building, fully furnished, with a shuttle service to the hospital. By Friday, he had a contact at the trial who'd expedited Sophie's application. By Monday of the second week, they had confirmation. Sophie was accepted into the trial. Treatment would start in 10 days. 10 days to pack up their lives and move across the country. Adrian spent those days in constant motion, sorting through belongings, deciding what was essential and what could be left behind. Sophie helped where she could, though she tired easily. Her cough had gotten worse despite the medicine, a reminder that time was not on their side. On Thursday evening, exactly 1 week before they were supposed to leave, Chloe showed up at their door with Chinese takeout and a determined expression. I'm here to help you pack, she announced. Adrian stared at her. You don't need to do that. I know, but you're running out of time and you look exhausted, so I'm helping whether you like it or not. She pushed past him into the house. Sophie, I brought spring rolls. Sophie appeared at the top of the stairs, grinning. Over the past 2 weeks, she and Chloe had talked several times, Chloe checking in on the trial preparations, Sophie asking questions about Boston. They'd developed an easy rapport that surprised Adrian. Are you really going to help us pack? Sophie asked. That's the plan, unless your dad is too stubborn to accept help. They both looked at Adrian. He raised his hands in surrender. Fine. Help away. They ate Chinese food on the living room floor, boxes and packing tape scattered around them. Chloe had brought labels and a system, color-coded markers for different categories, lists of essentials versus things that could be shipped later. You've done this before, Adrian observed. I move constantly for work. Got pretty good at efficient packing. Chloe was labeling a box of Sophie's books. The key is being ruthless about what you actually need versus what you think you need. I need Mr. Elephant, Sophie said firmly, clutching her stuffed animal. Mr. Elephant is definitely essential, Chloe agreed. But maybe we don't need every single toy. We could pack your top 10 favorites. Sophie considered this seriously. Top 15. Top 12. Deal. They worked together through the evening, and Adrian found himself grateful for Chloe's presence in a way he hadn't expected. She didn't treat them with pity or excessive gentleness. She was practical, efficient, occasionally funny. She made Sophie laugh while debating which books were most important. She asked Adrian normal questions about his preferences instead of constantly checking if he was okay. It felt almost normal, like they were just friends helping each other move, not strangers brought together by an airport confrontation and a desperate search for better treatment options. Around 9, Sophie started fading. Adrian got her ready for bed while Chloe cleaned up the food containers. Thank you for the spring rolls, Sophie said sleepily as Adrian tucked her in. Thank Chloe. She brought them. I did. Can you tell her thank you from me? You can tell her yourself tomorrow. She'll probably be back to help more. Sophie smiled. I like her. She's different from most grown-ups. Yeah? How so? She doesn't talk to me like I'm a little kid. She talks to me like I'm a person. Sophie's eyes were already closing. And she makes you smile more. You don't smile enough, Dad. Adrian's chest tightened. Get some sleep, sweetheart. He found Chloe in the kitchen, stacking labeled boxes against the wall with military precision. Sophie says thank you for the spring rolls, Adrian said, and apparently you make me smile more. Chloe looked up, surprised. Do I? According to my 9-year-old daughter, yes. Well, 9-year-olds are famously perceptive. Chloe straightened, wiping dust off her jeans. She's a great kid, Adrian. You're doing an amazing job with her. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's what good parenting looks like. The ones who think they have it all figured out are usually screwing up their kids in ways they'll discover in therapy later. Adrian laughed despite himself. That's a cynical take. That's a realistic take. Nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just making it up as we go and hoping we don't cause too much damage. Chloe grabbed her jacket from the back of a chair. I should head out, but I'll be back tomorrow after work to help with more packing. You really don't have to keep doing this. I know. But here's the thing. Chloe met his eyes directly. I spent years thinking success meant money and status and being better than other people. And then I met you and Sophie, and I realized I'd been measuring everything wrong. So yeah, I'm going to keep helping. Not because I owe you, but because it's the first thing I've done in years that actually matters. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. Well, thank you for all of it. You're welcome. Now get some sleep. You look like you're about to fall over. She left, and Adrian stood in his partially packed house feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Like maybe they weren't completely alone in this. Like maybe accepting help wasn't weakness, just survival. He checked on Sophie one more time, then fell into bed without bothering to change clothes. 6 days until Boston. 6 days to finish packing, coordinate with Dr. Chen's team, prepare Sophie for what was coming. 6 days until they bet everything on hope and 82% odds, and a doctor they'd never met. The night before they left, Adrian couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, mentally reviewing lists he'd already checked 3 times. Medications packed, documents organized, apartment lease signed, shuttle service confirmed. Dr. Morrison had called earlier to wish them luck, her voice warm but professional. Take care of that girl, she'd said. And Adrian? Take care of yourself too. Sophie needs you healthy. Around 2 in the morning, Adrian gave up on sleep and went downstairs. He found Sophie sitting at the kitchen table, Mr. Elephant in her lap, looking small and scared. Can't sleep either? Adrian sat down beside her. I'm scared, Sophie said quietly. Me too. Really? You don't seem scared. That's because I'm very good at pretending. Adrian pulled her onto his lap. You want to know a secret? I've been scared every single day since you got sick. I just hide it so you don't have to worry about me worrying about you. Sophie processed this. That seems exhausting. It really is. So what do you do when you're scared? Adrian thought about it. I remind myself why we're doing scary things. We're going to Boston because there's a doctor there who might be able to help you in ways the doctors here can't. We're trying something new because what we've been doing isn't working. And yeah, it's scary. But staying here and watching you get sicker is scarier. What if the new treatment doesn't work? Then we'll try something else. We'll keep trying until we find something that does work. That's what we do. We don't give up. Sophie leaned against his chest. Do you think Mom would want us to go to Boston? Adrian's breath caught. Sophie rarely mentioned Emily directly. It was usually indirect references, questions about what Mom would think or do. Yeah, sweetheart. I think she'd already have us packed and on a plane. Your mom never hesitated when it came to doing what was best for you. I miss her. I know. Me too. They sat together in the quiet kitchen, father and daughter, holding on to each other in the dark hours before everything changed again. Adrian thought about Emily, about how she'd faced her own diagnosis with the kind of fierce determination that had amazed him. She'd fought hard, but the cancer had been faster. He wouldn't let the same thing happen to Sophie. He couldn't. Dad? Sophie's voice was small. What if I'm in the 35% that doesn't work? The question hung in the air between them. Adrian had been waiting for it, dreading it, knowing it would come eventually. Then we'll deal with that when and if it happens, he said carefully. But right now, we're betting on the 82%. We're choosing to believe this is going to work. Is that enough? Just believing? Sometimes belief is all we have, and sometimes Adrian pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Sometimes it's enough. They left for the airport at 6 the next morning. Chloe had offered to drive them, but Adrian had declined. Some things he needed to do alone. He loaded their suitcases into the trunk while Sophie said goodbye to their house, touching walls and door frames like she was memorizing them. The drive to the airport was quiet. Sophie dozed in the back seat, exhausted from lack of sleep and the low-grade fever she'd been running for days. Adrian drove on autopilot, his mind already in Boston, already walking into Dr. Chen's office, already beginning the treatment that would either save his daughter or break his heart trying. His phone buzzed at a red light. Text from Chloe. Safe travels. You've got this. Call me when you land. Then another message. And Adrian? Thank you for letting me be part of this, for letting me help. It means more than you know. Adrian typed back with one hand. Thank you for caring enough to show up, for all of it. The airport was crowded with morning travelers, business people with rolling luggage, families heading to vacations, the normal chaos of people going places. Adrian got Sophie checked in, navigated security, found their gate with an hour to spare. They sat in the same cafe where this had all started. Different terminal, but the same chain, the same setup. Adrian ordered hot chocolate for Sophie and coffee for himself, thinking about that day 2 weeks ago when Chloe had demanded he move, when he'd been too tired to fight, when everything had seemed impossible. It still seemed impossible. But now there was a path forward. Now there was hope that looked like Dr. Patricia Chen and a clinical trial in Boston and 82% odds. Dad? Sophie was looking at him with those serious eyes. Are we doing the right thing? Honestly, I don't know, but I think we're doing the bravest thing, and sometimes that's more important. What if I'm not brave enough? Adrian took her hand. Sophie, you're the bravest person I know. You've been fighting this for 3 years. You keep smiling even when you feel terrible. You comfort me when I'm the one who should be comforting you. If that's not brave, I don't know what is. You're brave too. You never give up on me. That's not bravery. That's just being your dad. It's not optional. Sophie smiled slightly. Chloe said you're one of the good ones. Yeah? When did she say that? Yesterday when she was helping me pack. She said most people just feel bad about stuff, but you actually do something about it. She said that's rare. Adrian felt his throat tighten. Chloe talks a lot. I like when she talks. She says interesting things. Sophie took a sip of hot chocolate, leaving a whipped cream mustache on her upper lip. Do you think we'll see her when we come back? Probably. She seems pretty determined to stay in our lives. Good. I want her to. Sophie wiped her mouth. It's nice having someone besides you and Aunt Rachel. Not that you're not enough. You're definitely enough. But sometimes it's good to have more people. Yeah, Adrian agreed quietly. Sometimes it is. The boarding call came too soon and too slow at the same time. Adrian gathered their things, helped Sophie with her backpack, prepared for the long flight ahead. As they walked toward the gate, his phone buzzed one more time. Another message from Chloe. Just 2 words this time. 82%. Adrian smiled despite everything and typed back. We'll take those odds. They boarded the plane, found their seats, buckled in for whatever came next. Sophie fell asleep before takeoff, her hand in Adrian's, her breathing steady despite the fever and the cough and everything working against her. Adrian looked out the window at the tarmac, at the ground crew loading luggage, at the normal world operating like nothing was wrong. Somewhere in Boston, Dr. Chen was preparing for their arrival. Somewhere ahead was treatment and hope, and the terrifying possibility of things working out. The plane lifted off. Sophie didn't wake. Adrian held her hand and watched their city disappear beneath the clouds. Everything they knew becoming smaller and more distant. Forward. That's all they could do. Keep moving forward and hope that 82% was enough. Boston greeted them with freezing rain and wind that cut through Adrian's jacket like it wasn't even there. He'd forgotten how brutal East Coast weather could be in late autumn, or maybe he'd never really known, having spent most of his adult life in California's forgiving climate. Sophie shivered against him as they waited for their luggage, her fever making her more sensitive to the cold. Adrian wrapped his jacket around her shoulders, even though it left him in just a thin sweater. I don't like it here, Sophie said quietly. We just got here. Give it a chance. It's cold and wet and everything smells weird. That's just airport smell. Every airport smells like that. No, they don't. LAX smells like jet fuel and coffee. This smells like... She wrinkled her nose, like old socks and sadness. Adrian couldn't help but laugh. Old socks and sadness. That's poetic. I'm serious, Dad. This place feels wrong. He knelt down so they were eye level, ignoring the crowd flowing around them. Listen to me. I know this is scary. I know everything feels wrong right now, but we didn't come here because it would be comfortable. We came here to get you better. Can you trust me on that? Sophie's lip trembled slightly. I'm trying. That's all I'm asking. Just keep trying. Their luggage finally appeared on the carousel. 3 large suitcases and 2 carry-ons that held their entire lives for the next 2 months. Adrian loaded everything onto a cart, while Sophie held Mr. Elephant tight and watched the strangers rushing past with the kind of wariness that made Adrian's chest ache. The shuttle to the medical residential building took 20 minutes through gray streets and grayer skies. Sophie pressed her face against the window, taking in the unfamiliar city with quiet dread. Adrian tried to point out interesting things, historic buildings, the river, a park that might be nice when it wasn't raining, but his attempts at cheerfulness fell flat. The residential building was exactly what Chloe had described: clean, functional, designed for families who'd rather be anywhere else. The lobby had that particular institutional quality: comfortable but not homey, equipped but not lived in. A woman at the front desk checked them in with practiced efficiency. Blake, apartment 4C. You're pre-registered with the trial coordinator. Shuttle passes are in your welcome packet. Want ishi pasito. There's a family lounge on the second floor and a small kitchen on each floor if you need to cook. She slid 2 key cards across the desk. Anything else I can help you with? We're good, thank you. The elevator was slow. Their apartment was on the 4th floor, at the end of a long hallway that smelled like cleaning products and the ghosts of other people's medical crises. Adrian unlocked the door, and they stepped into what would be home for the next 8 weeks. It was fine. 2 bedrooms, a small living area, a kitchenette, a bathroom with grab bars that reminded Adrian why they were here. The furniture was neutral and inoffensive. The walls were beige. Everything was designed to be forgotten. Sophie walked slowly through the space, her footsteps echoing on the laminate floor. She looked into her assigned bedroom, twin bed, small dresser, window overlooking the parking lot, and Adrian watched her face crumple. Hey, we can make it better, he said quickly. We'll put up some of your posters, arrange your stuffed animals, make it feel more like yours. It's not mine. It's just a room. Her voice was thick with tears she was trying not to shed. I want to go home. Adrian sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her onto his lap, same as he'd done 1,000 times before. I know. I want to go home too, but we can't. Not yet. Why did we come here? I hate it here. Boo. Because sometimes the things that help us aren't comfortable. Sometimes they're hard and scary and in places that smell like old socks and sadness. That got a wet laugh out of her. You remembered. Of course I remembered. I remember everything you say. Adrian wiped tears off her cheeks with his thumb. Tell you what, let's get unpacked. Make this place a little less terrible, then order the greasiest pizza we can find. Hospital food starts tomorrow, so we might as well eat real food while we can. Can we get extra cheese? We can get whatever you want. They spent the next hour unpacking. Adrian let Sophie direct the arrangement of her room, trying to give her some control over an uncontrollable situation. She lined up her stuffed animals on the bed by height, stuck her favorite posters on the walls with painter's tape, arranged her books on the small shelf in order of importance rather than alphabetically. Adrian set up his own room with less ceremony. Clothes in drawers, laptop on the desk, phone charger by the bed. He kept Emily's photo in his suitcase, wrapped carefully in a soft shirt. Looking at it hurt too much right now. His phone buzzed while he was putting away socks. Chloe, checking in. You made it? Yeah. Sophie hates it. Place smells like old socks and sadness, apparently. That's oddly specific. Is she okay? She's 9 and scared and 3,000 miles from home. She's as okay as she can be. And you? Adrian looked around the beige apartment with its temporary furniture and medical equipment catalogs on the coffee table. Same answer. Want me to fly out? I can be there by tomorrow night. Adrian stared at the message for a long moment. Part of him wanted to say yes, wanted someone familiar here, someone who could make Sophie smile and remind Adrian he wasn't completely alone in this. But another part of him knew they needed to do this themselves, that accepting too much help could become a crutch. Not yet. Let us settle in first. If things get rough, I'll let you know. Promise? Promise. He put the phone down and went to check on Sophie. She'd fallen asleep on top of her carefully arranged stuffed animals, still wearing her travel clothes, her face blotchy from crying. Adrian pulled a blanket over her gently and stood in the doorway watching her breathe. First day in Boston, and they were both already exhausted. Tomorrow they met Dr. Chen. Tomorrow, the real work began. Tonight, they just had to survive being here. The pizza arrived 40 minutes later, but Sophie was too deep in sleep to wake for it. Adrian ate 2 slices standing at the kitchenette counter, staring out at the parking lot and the rain that hadn't stopped since they'd landed. His phone showed 6:30, but his body thought it was 3:30, and his brain felt like it had been awake for days. He was finishing his 3rd slice when someone knocked on the door. Adrian opened it to find a woman in her mid-50s, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing scrubs with cartoon characters on them. "Mr. Blake? I'm Sarah Chen, one of the trial coordinators. Sorry to bother you on your first night, but I wanted to stop by and make sure you had everything you needed." "We're fine, thank you." "Your daughter is Sophie, correct? How's she handling the move?" "About as well as you'd expect. She's asleep right now." Sarah's expression softened with understanding. "First few days are always the hardest. New place, new people, scary situation. But I promise it gets easier once you settle into a routine." "When do we meet Dr. Chen?" "Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. She'll go over the treatment protocol, answer questions, do an initial assessment. The actual first treatment won't start until Wednesday, assuming all the pre-treatment tests look good." Adrian nodded, filing away the information. "And the tests are?" "Blood work, imaging, physical exam, standard stuff to make sure Sophie's strong enough for the protocol." Sarah paused. "Dr. Chen probably mentioned this already, but this treatment is intensive. The first 2 weeks especially. Sophie's going to feel worse before she feels better." "I know. Her oncologist back home walked us through it." "Good. That helps." Sarah handed him a folder. "This has the schedule for the next 2 weeks, contact numbers if you need anything, and information about support services available to trial families. There's a family support group that meets Tuesday nights if you're interested." Adrian took the folder without looking at it. "Thanks. One more thing," Sarah's voice gentled. "I've been coordinating trials for 12 years. I've seen a lot of scared parents walk through these doors. And I know right now everything probably feels impossible. But you made the right choice coming here. Dr. Chen is brilliant, and this protocol is the best chance Sophie has." 82%, Adrian said quietly. "That's right, 82%. Those are good odds, Mr. Blake. Hold on to that." After Sarah left, Adrian sat on the uncomfortable couch and opened the folder. The schedule was color-coded and detailed. Treatment days, rest days, monitoring appointments, follow-up scans. 2 months of their lives mapped out in neat little boxes. Wednesday, first treatment, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Friday, treatment 2, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday, treatment 3, plus first progress scan. It went on like that, relentless and structured, no room for deviation or doubt. Adrian read through it twice, memorizing dates and times, then set it aside and pulled out his laptop. Email from his sister. "Call me when you're settled. Love you both." Email from work. "Take all the time you need. Sophie comes first." Email from Dr. Morrison. "Let me know how the first appointment goes." Nothing that required immediate response. Adrian closed the laptop and sat in the quiet apartment, listening to the rain against the windows and Sophie's soft breathing from the other room. Tomorrow they would meet Dr. Patricia Chen, the woman who might save his daughter's life or become another name on the list of doctors who'd tried and failed. Tomorrow they would start the process that would either validate this entire cross-country gamble or prove they'd bet everything on hope that couldn't deliver. But tonight, Sophie was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. Tonight, they had shelter and food and each other. Tonight was enough. Adrian must have dozed off on the couch because he woke to Sophie shaking his shoulder, her face pale in the dim light. "Dad, I don't feel good." He was on his feet instantly, hand going to her forehead, burning up, worse than this morning. "Okay, let me get the thermometer." 103.2 degrees, too high. Way too high for someone starting treatment in less than 48 hours. Adrian grabbed his phone, found the emergency number Sarah had given him, and called. She answered on the second ring. "Sarah Chen. It's Adrian Blake. Sophie's running a fever, 103.2. What do I do? How long has she had it?" "She's been running low grade for a few days, but this is higher than it's been." "Any other symptoms? Vomiting? Difficulty breathing? Rash?" Adrian looked at Sophie, who was curled on the couch looking miserable. No, just the fever and she's been coughing. Okay, give her Tylenol, push fluids, monitor her overnight. If it goes above 104 or she develops other symptoms, take her to the ER. Otherwise, I'll have Dr. Chen check her first thing tomorrow. What if she's too sick for treatment? Let's not jump ahead. Fevers happen. We'll assess tomorrow and adjust the schedule if needed. After Sarah hung up, Adrian got Sophie situated with medicine and water and a cool cloth for her forehead. She looked small and fragile in the unfamiliar room, and Adrian felt the familiar surge of helplessness that had been his constant companion for 3 years. Am I going to mess everything up? Sophie's voice was barely above a whisper. What? No. Why would you think that? If I'm too sick, they won't let me do the treatment, and we came all this way for nothing. Sophie, listen to me. You're not messing anything up. You're sick because you have cancer, not because you did something wrong. And if they need to delay treatment a few days, we delay. We didn't come here for nothing. But what if? No what ifs right now. Right now, we focus on getting your fever down and getting some rest. Tomorrow we deal with tomorrow. He stayed with her, monitoring her temperature every hour, replacing the cool cloth, making sure she drank water. Around 2 in the morning, the fever finally broke. Sophie fell into deeper sleep, and Adrian allowed himself to breathe again. He moved to the chair beside her bed and watched her sleep, this small person who carried so much without complaint. Emily used to say Sophie got her strength from him, but Adrian knew better. Sophie's strength was entirely her own, forged in hospital rooms and treatment centers, built from courage no child should need. His phone lit up with a text from Chloe, sent an hour ago. Thinking about you guys. Hope first day went okay. Adrian typed back even though it was late. Sophie had a fever spike. Got it under control. Meeting Dr. Chen in 7 hours. The response came immediately. You're not sleeping either, huh? Can't. Too wired. Want to talk? I'm up anyway. Adrian considered declining, but the apartment was too quiet and his thoughts were too loud. Call me. His phone rang seconds later. Hey. Chloe's voice was soft. How bad is it? The fever or the general situation? Both. Adrian looked at Sophie sleeping peacefully now. Fever's down. She's stable. The general situation is... He paused. I don't know what we're doing here, Chloe. This place is awful. Sophie hates it. I hate it. And we haven't even started treatment yet. You're doing what you have to do. That's what you're doing here. What if it's not enough? What if we put her through all this and it doesn't work? Then you'll have tried everything possible, and that's all any parent can do. Adrian rubbed his eyes, exhaustion making everything feel heavier. Tell me about your day. Something normal. Please. Okay. Chloe's voice shifted, became lighter. I had the most ridiculous meeting with a startup founder who wants to disrupt the pet industry with blockchain-enabled dog collars. Spent 2 hours listening to him explain how cryptocurrency could revolutionize how we track our pets. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? I told him nobody wants their dog on the blockchain. He got very upset. Did you fund him? Absolutely not. But he gave me a prototype collar. It's sitting on my desk mocking me. Adrian found himself almost smiling. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. Maybe donate it to a museum of terrible ideas like... She paused. How's this helping? More than you know. Keep going. She talked for another 20 minutes about work drama, about a restaurant she'd tried, about her neighbor's ongoing war with the HOA over his garden gnome collection. Normal things. Mundane things. The kind of everyday chaos that felt impossibly distant from Adrian's current reality. When she finally ran out of stories, silence settled between them. Comfortable, not awkward. Thank you, Adrian said quietly, for boring you with my day, for making me remember there's a world outside of hospitals and treatment schedules. There is, and you'll get back to it. Both of you. 82%, Adrian said more to himself than to her. 82%, Chloe repeated firmly. Now get some sleep. You need to be sharp for Dr. Chen tomorrow. Yeah, okay. And Adrian, you're doing everything right. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are. After they hung up, Adrian sat in the dark room listening to Sophie breathe in the rain against the window and the unfamiliar sounds of a building full of other families fighting their own battles. He must have fallen asleep in the chair because the next thing he knew, pale morning light was filtering through the curtains, and Sophie was awake, looking at him with confused eyes. "Dad, why are you in the chair?" Adrian's neck screamed in protest as he sat up. "Wanted to keep an eye on you. How do you feel?" Sophie considered the question seriously. "Better than last night. Still not great." Adrian checked her forehead. Warm, but not burning. "Well enough to meet Dr. Chen?" "I guess. Do I have to?" "Yeah, sweetheart, you do." They went through the morning routine in slow motion, Sophie moving carefully, like everything hurt. Adrian trying to project calm confidence he didn't feel. By 8:30, they were dressed and heading down to the shuttle that would take them to the research hospital. The hospital was enormous, a maze of wings and departments and signage that all blurred together. Adrian followed the directions Sarah had given them to the third floor, Suite 314, where Dr. Patricia Chen's office waited. The waiting room was nicer than most medical waiting rooms Adrian had seen. Actual comfortable chairs, warm lighting, artwork that didn't look like it came from a hotel liquidation sale. 3 other families sat scattered around the space, all wearing variations of the same expression, hope mixed with terror. "Blake family," a nurse appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Chen is ready for you." Adrian took Sophie's hand and they followed the nurse down a hallway to a corner office with windows overlooking the city. Dr. Patricia Chen stood up from behind her desk, and Adrian's first thought was that she looked younger than he'd expected. Early 40s maybe, with sharp eyes and an air of someone who didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Mr. Blake." "Sophie." She shook Adrian's hand firmly, then knelt down to Sophie's level. "I've heard a lot about you, Sophie. Your doctors in California sent me all your records. You've been through a lot." Sophie nodded, shy in the face of this stranger who held so much power over their future. "I know you're scared," Dr. Chen continued. "I would be too if I were you, but I want you to know something. I don't take patients into my trials unless I genuinely believe I can help them, and I believe I can help you." "How?" Sophie's voice was small. "By using your own immune system to fight the tumor. See, right now your body is trying to attack the cancer, but it's not strong enough on its own. My treatment makes it stronger. It's like..." She paused, searching for the right analogy. "Like giving your body's army better weapons and training. Does that make sense?" "I think so." "Good." Dr. Chen stood up and gestured to the chairs. "Let's talk about what the next few weeks are going to look like." She spent the next hour going over everything in detail: the treatment protocol, the timeline, the expected side effects, the monitoring schedule. She was direct without being scary, honest without being cruel. Adrian appreciated it more than she probably knew. "Sarah mentioned Sophie had a fever last night?" Dr. Chen looked at Adrian. 103.2. We got it down with Tylenol. This morning she's at about 99. Dr. Chen pulled up Sophie's latest blood work on her computer. Her white count is low, which explains the fever. We'll need to watch that closely. I'm going to start her on antibiotics today, as a precaution, and we'll delay the first treatment until Monday instead of Wednesday. Adrian felt something in his chest loosen. "So she can still do the trial?" "Absolutely. We just need to get her infection under control first. Pushing forward when her immune system is already compromised would be dangerous." Dr. Chen turned to Sophie. "Which means you get a few extra days to settle in. Maybe explore the city a little if you're feeling up to it." "I don't like the city," Sophie said quietly. "No? Why not?" "It's cold and wet and smells weird." Dr. Chen laughed. A real laugh, not the condescending chuckle some doctors gave kids. "You know what? You're absolutely right. Boston in November is pretty terrible. But we have really good seafood and the aquarium is amazing. Maybe your dad can take you when you're feeling better." Sophie looked at Adrian. He nodded. "We can do that." "Okay," Sophie said, some of the tension leaving her small shoulders. Dr. Chen did a physical exam, asked more questions, made notes in her tablet. Finally, she sat back and looked at both of them directly. "I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to be hard. Harder than anything you've done before. The treatment is aggressive, and Sophie's going to feel sick, really sick. There will be days when you question whether we made the right choice doing this, whether it's worth it." "And?" Adrian prompted. "And I'm telling you now, it is worth it. I've been running this trial for 2 years. I've seen kids who were given months to live go into complete remission. I've seen families get their lives back. The data doesn't lie, and the data says this works more often than it doesn't. 82%, Adrian said. 82%, Dr. Chen confirmed. Those are the best odds you're going to find anywhere for Sophie's type of tumor. So when it gets hard, and it will get hard, I need you both to remember that number. Can you do that? Adrian looked at Sophie. She looked back at him, and in her eyes he saw Emily's determination mixed with her own quiet courage. We can do that, Adrian said. Good. Dr. Chen stood up. Sarah will get you set up with the antibiotics and the revised schedule. I'll see you both Monday morning, 8 o'clock sharp. Come ready to fight. As they left the office, Sophie slipped her hand into Adrian's. I like her, she said quietly. Yeah? She talks to me like I'm smart enough to understand, and she didn't promise everything would be easy. No, she didn't. That's good. I'm tired of people lying about how easy things are. Adrian pulled her close as they waited for the elevator. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. They picked up the antibiotics from the hospital pharmacy, got the revised schedule from Sarah, and took the shuttle back to their apartment. The rain had finally stopped, and weak sunlight was trying to break through the clouds. Adrian's phone buzzed as they walked into the building. Text from Chloe. How'd it go? Adrian thought about Dr. Chen's directness, about Sophie's fever and the delayed timeline, about 82% odds and fighting back and his daughter's hand in his. Better than expected. Treatment starts Monday. And Sophie? She likes Dr. Chen. Says she doesn't lie about things being easy. Smart kid. Yeah, she is. Back in the apartment, Sophie was already looking more like herself. The antibiotics working fast, or maybe just the relief of having met Dr. Chen and found her acceptable. She arranged her stuffed animals in a new configuration while Adrian made lunch from the groceries they'd picked up that morning. Dad? Sophie called from her room. Yeah? I think maybe Boston doesn't smell as bad as I thought. Adrian smiled. That might be the antibiotics talking. Maybe. But I think it can be brave here for a little while. Adrian stood in the doorway of her room, watching her carefully position Mr. Elephant at the head of her stuffed animal army. 9 years old and already understanding that bravery wasn't about not being scared. It was about being scared and showing up anyway. I think you can too, he said softly. In fact, I'm sure of it. The weekend passed in a strange suspension between waiting and preparing. Sophie's fever stayed down with the antibiotics, but she moved through the apartment like a ghost, quiet and withdrawn in a way that worried Adrian more than any temperature spike. She picked at her meals, stared out the window at the gray city, and asked fewer questions than usual. Saturday evening, Adrian found her sitting on the floor of her room, surrounded by stuffed animals arranged in a circle around her. What's going on here? He asked gently. I'm telling them what's going to happen, so they're not scared on Monday. Adrian sat down beside her, careful not to disturb the arrangement. That's thoughtful of you. Are they worried? Mr. Elephant is. He remembers the other treatments, how sick they made me. Sophie's voice was matter-of-fact, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the elephant's position. I told him this one is different. Dr. Chen said it would work better. Do you believe that? Sophie was quiet for a long moment. I want to. But wanting something doesn't make it true. The wisdom in that statement, the weary understanding no 9-year-old should possess, hit Adrian like a physical blow. He pulled her onto his lap, stuffed animals and all. You're right. Wanting something doesn't make it true. But sometimes believing in something gives us the strength to get through it, even if we're not sure how it ends. Is that what you do? Believe even when you're not sure? Every single day. Sophie leaned back against his chest. I'm scared, Dad. More scared than I've been before. Why more this time? Because this is supposed to be the good one, the one with better odds. And if it doesn't work, her voice cracked. If this doesn't work, what's left? Adrian held her tighter, feeling the weight of a question he'd asked himself 100 times in the dark hours of sleepless nights. Then we find something else. We keep fighting. We don't give up. Even if I want to, even if I'm tired of fighting? The honesty of it stunned him. Are you tired of fighting? Sophie was quiet again, and when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I think about what it would be like to just stop, to not have to be brave anymore. Adrian's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her she couldn't think like that, couldn't give up, had to keep fighting. But he also knew she was entitled to her exhaustion, her moments of weakness, her very human desire to stop carrying an impossible weight. Okay, he said carefully. When you feel like that, when you're tired of being brave, you tell me, and I'll be brave enough for both of us until you're ready to try again. Deal? Sophie twisted around to look at him. You mean that? I've never meant anything more in my life. She buried her face in his shoulder, and he felt her tears soaking through his shirt. They sat like that for a long time, surrounded by stuffed animals who'd been promised everything would be okay, in an apartment 3,000 miles from home, the day before treatment that might save her life or break them both trying. Eventually, Sophie's breathing evened out, and Adrian realized she'd fallen asleep. He carried her to bed, tucked her in with Mr. Elephant, and stood watching her for a long moment before retreating to the living room. His phone showed 8:30. He pulled up Chloe's contact and stared at it for a full minute before making the call. She answered immediately. Hey, how's she doing? Scared, really scared. We both are. Treatment's tomorrow, right? Monday morning, 8 o'clock. Adrian sank onto the couch. She asked me what happens if this doesn't work. What's left? What did you tell her? That we keep fighting, that we don't give up. And do you believe that? Adrian closed his eyes. I don't know what I believe anymore. 3 years of this, Chloe. 3 years of hope and disappointment and watching her suffer. And now we're betting everything on one more protocol, one more doctor, one more round of maybe this time it'll be different. But this time it is different. The odds are better. Dr. Chen's results are real. I know. Logically, I know that. But there's this voice in my head that keeps saying, what if we're in the 18%? What if we put her through all this and it still doesn't work? Then at least you'll know you tried everything, that you gave her every possible chance. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Because it doesn't. Chloe was quiet for a moment. I'm coming to Boston. What? No, you don't need to. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you I'm coming. You need someone there, and I'm the someone who's showing up. Her voice was firm. I'll fly out tomorrow morning, get there by evening. I'll stay through the week, help however I can. Chloe, Adrian, stop arguing. You've been doing this alone for 3 years. Let someone help, please. He wanted to say no. Wanted to maintain that he could handle this, that accepting more help would somehow make him weaker. But the truth was, he was drowning, had been drowning for a long time, and someone was offering a lifeline. Okay, he said quietly. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just text me your address so I know where to go. After they hung up, Adrian sat in the dark apartment thinking about how strange it was that Chloe Bennett, a woman who'd tried to kick him out of an airport cafe a month ago, had become someone he trusted in his daughter's darkest hour. Life did that sometimes. Broke you down and rebuilt you with pieces you never saw coming. Sunday morning arrived too fast. Adrian woke to find Sophie already up, sitting at the kitchenette table with a bowl of cereal she wasn't eating. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Kept thinking about tomorrow. Adrian poured himself coffee and sat across from her. Want to do something today? Take your mind off it? Like what? Dr. Chen mentioned the aquarium. We could go check it out if you're feeling up to it. Sophie pushed cereal around her bowl. Will there be lots of people? Probably. It's Sunday. I don't think I can do lots of people right now. Everyone stares. Adrian knew what she meant. The looks people gave when they saw a pale, thin child with a medical port visible through her shirt, the way strangers' expressions shifted from curiosity to pity when they figured out what they were looking at. Then we stay in today. Watch movies, play games, whatever you want. Can we just sit together, like we used to before I got sick? When we'd just sit on the couch and you'd read while I colored? The simplicity of the request, the nostalgia for ordinary moments that cancer had stolen, made Adrian's chest ache. Yeah, sweetheart. We can do that. They spent the day exactly like that. Adrian with a book he barely read, Sophie with her colored pencils and a pad of paper, both of them just existing in the same space without pressure or expectation. It was the most peaceful either of them had felt since landing in Boston. Around 4 in the afternoon, Adrian's phone buzzed. Text from Chloe. Just landed. Heading to hotel to drop bags, then coming to you. Need anything? Just you showing up is enough. She arrived an hour later, looking rumpled from travel, but bringing the kind of energy that had been missing from the apartment all weekend. Sophie's face lit up when she opened the door. You came! Of course I came. Couldn't let you guys have all the fun without me. Chloe handed Sophie a gift bag. Got you something for tomorrow. Sophie pulled out a small stuffed penguin wearing a superhero cape. He's perfect. Captain Courage, Chloe said seriously. For when you need backup. Sophie hugged the penguin tight. Thank you. While Sophie showed Captain Courage to her other stuffed animals, Chloe pulled Adrian aside. You look terrible, she said bluntly. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm serious. When's the last time you ate a real meal or slept more than 4 hours? I don't know. What day is it? That's what I thought. Chloe pulled out her phone. I'm ordering dinner, real food, not hospital cafeteria garbage or whatever you've been surviving on. And tomorrow, after treatment starts, I'm staying with Sophie so you can take an actual break. I'm not leaving her during treatment. I didn't say during, I said after. You're running on empty, Adrian. You can't take care of her if you don't take care of yourself. Adrian wanted to argue, but the concern in Chloe's eyes stopped him. Okay, we'll figure it out. Dinner was Thai food from a place Chloe had looked up, and it was the first meal Sophie had actually finished in days. They ate on the living room floor, Chloe telling stories about disastrous work meetings, and Sophie laughing in a way Adrian hadn't heard since they'd left California. After dinner, Sophie fell asleep early, exhausted from nerves and antibiotics and the emotional weight of tomorrow. Adrian tucked her in, then found Chloe standing at the window looking out at the city lights. She's a remarkable kid, Chloe said quietly. Yeah, she is. You know what's funny? When I met you at the airport, I saw exactly what I expected to see. Someone who didn't fit my narrow definition of success. Someone I could dismiss. She turned to face him. I've thought about that moment every day since. How wrong I was. How badly I misjudged everything. We all make assumptions. Maybe. But most people don't get the chance to see how wrong they were. I did. And it changed me. Chloe's voice was soft but intense. You changed me. Sophie changed me. The way you've handled all of this with so much grace and strength. Grace? I've barely held it together most days. That's what grace looks like, Adrian. Not perfection, just showing up scared and doing it anyway. She moved closer. Tomorrow's going to be hard. You're going to see Sophie suffer, and you're not going to be able to fix it, and you're going to question everything, but I need you to remember something. What? You're not alone in this anymore. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm here. Adrian felt something crack in his chest. The wall he'd built to keep from falling apart. The armor that had been holding him together for 3 years. I don't know how to let people in, not anymore. Emily died and I learned that depending on someone just means you lose them. Emily didn't choose to leave. Cancer took her. That's different from choosing not to show up. Is it? The result is the same. I'm still alone. But you're not. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Chloe's hand found his. You're not alone. Not unless you choose to be. Adrian looked down at their joined hands, at this connection he hadn't asked for but desperately needed. I'm scared, he admitted. More scared than I've ever been. I know. But you don't have to be scared alone. They stood like that for a long moment, the apartment quiet except for the distant sound of Boston traffic and Sophie's soft breathing from the other room. Tomorrow would be brutal. Tomorrow they would watch Sophie suffer through treatment that might save her, or might be another in a long line of failures. But tonight, Adrian wasn't alone. Ben, morning came with the kind of gray light that felt appropriate for what they were about to face. Adrian woke at 5:30, showered, and found Chloe already awake on the couch where she'd insisted on sleeping. You're up early, he said. Couldn't sleep much. Kept thinking about today. She stood up, folding the blanket neatly. I made coffee, and I was thinking, maybe I should be the one to go with Sophie. Give you a break? No, I need to be there. Are you sure? It might be easier if... I'm sure. Adrian's voice was firm. She needs me there. I need to be there. Chloe nodded, understanding. Okay, then I'll be here when you get back. I'll have food ready, the apartment cleaned up, whatever you need. Sophie emerged from her room at 6:30. Already dressed in comfortable clothes Adrian had laid out the night before. She looked small and pale, but her jaw was set with determination. Ready? Adrian asked. No, but we're doing it anyway, right? Right. The shuttle to the hospital was quiet. Sophie held both Mr. Elephant and Captain Courage, one in each hand, staring out the window at the city waking up around them. Adrian held her shoulder gently, a steady point of contact to remind her he was there. The treatment center was on the hospital's 5th floor, designed specifically for clinical trials. It looked different from regular oncology wards, newer, brighter, trying very hard to not look like a place where desperate families came for last-chance treatments. Dr. Chen met them in the prep room, already gloved and ready. Morning, Sophie. Ready to become a superhero? Sophie's lip trembled. What if it doesn't work? Then we try something else. But I don't think we'll need to. You know why? Dr. Chen knelt down to Sophie's level. Because your immune system is already strong. It's been fighting this whole time. We're just giving it better tools. And I've seen those tools work 82 times out of 100. Those are the best odds in medicine, kiddo. 82%, Sophie whispered. That's right. Hold on to that number. When it gets hard, and it will get hard, you remember that number. The treatment itself was deceptively simple. An IV line, bags of medication that looked unremarkable, monitors that beeped softly. Sophie lay in a reclining chair that was trying very hard to be comfortable but wasn't quite managing it. Adrian sat beside her holding her hand, watching the medicine drip slowly into her bloodstream. This clear liquid that held so much hope, so much potential, so much uncertainty. For the first hour, nothing happened. Sophie dozed. Adrian read the same page of his book 17 times without processing any of it. Nurses came and went checking vitals. Then Sophie's grip on his hand tightened. Dad? I feel weird. Weird how? Like everything's buzzing. Like I can feel the medicine moving through me. Adrian looked up at the nurse. She checked Sophie's monitors, adjusted something, nodded. That's normal. The treatment is working. It's going to feel strange for a while. By hour 2, Sophie was nauseated. By hour 3, she was actively sick, throwing up into a basin while Adrian held her hair back and murmured the same useless comforts he'd been murmuring for 3 years. I hate this, Sophie gasped between heaves. I hate it so much. I know, baby. I know. Make it stop. Please make it stop. I can't. I'm so sorry. I can't. Dr. Chen came in, administered anti-nausea medication, adjusted the treatment rate. This is the worst part, she said calmly. Her body is reacting to the immune boost. It'll ease up in another hour or so. But it didn't ease up. It got worse. Sophie's temperature spiked, her heart rate climbed, her small body fighting against the very treatment meant to save her. Adrian watched helplessly as nurses swarmed as Dr. Chen issued calm orders as his daughter suffered through something he'd promised would help. We're stopping the treatment, Dr. Chen announced. She's having too strong a reaction. We need to stabilize her. What does that mean? Adrian's voice came out strangled. She's okay, but her body needs a break. We'll try again in a few days with a modified protocol. Dr. Chen's hand on his shoulder was steady. This happens sometimes, Adrian. It doesn't mean the treatment won't work. It just means we need to adjust the approach. Sophie was crying softly, exhausted and sick and miserable. Adrian gathered her into his arms, careful of the IV lines and monitors, and held her while she shook. I tried, she whispered. I tried to be brave. You were brave. You are brave. This isn't your fault. But I couldn't do it. My body couldn't handle it. Your body is fighting. That's what this reaction means. It's fighting so hard that we need to give it a different strategy. That's not failure, Sophie. That's information. But the words felt hollow, even as he said them. They'd come 3,000 miles, put Sophie through this, and the first treatment had been a disaster. 82% odds didn't matter if your body rejected the treatment before it could work. Dr. Chen kept Sophie for observation for another 3 hours, making sure her vitals stabilized, adjusting medications, making notes for the revised protocol. By the time they were cleared to leave, it was after 6 in the evening, and Sophie could barely keep her eyes open. Adrian carried her to the shuttle, her head on his shoulder, her arms wrapped weakly around his neck. He'd never felt more helpless in his entire life. The apartment door opened before he could reach for his keys. Chloe took one look at them and immediately shifted into action mode. Sophie's room is ready. I have crackers and ginger ale if she can keep anything down. And I ordered soup for you even though I know you won't eat it. Adrian carried Sophie to her bed. Chloe had transformed the room while they were gone. New sheets, a small lamp casting warm light. Sophie's stuffed animals arranged protectively around the pillow. The animals, Sophie murmured. You put them in the right spots. Captain Courage told me where everyone goes, Chloe said softly. He's very particular about formation. Sophie managed a weak smile before her eyes closed. Adrian tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and stood watching her breathe for a long moment before retreating to the living room. Chloe was waiting with 2 cups of tea he didn't remember requesting. She handed him one and sat beside him on the couch. Tell me, she said simply. So he did. All of it. The treatment failing, Sophie's body rejecting it, Dr. Chen stopping everything, the way his daughter had apologized for her own body not cooperating, as if any of this was her fault. She thinks she failed, Adrian said, his voice breaking. She thinks her body failed, and I don't know how to tell her that's not true when it feels like maybe it is. It's not true and you know it. Chloe's voice was firm. Dr. Chen said this happens sometimes, that they adjust and try again. Sophie didn't fail. The protocol was wrong for her body. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, we just put her through 6 hours of hell for nothing. Not for nothing. For information. For data that tells Dr. Chen how to adjust the treatment so it works better next time. What if there is no next time? What if her body can't handle it at all? Then you figure out plan C and plan D, and however many plans it takes. Chloe took his hand. But you don't give up after one bad day. You don't let Sophie think her body failed her when her body is fighting harder than most people fight in their entire lives. Adrian closed his eyes, feeling tears he'd been holding back all day finally break through. I can't lose her, Chloe. I can't go through that again. You won't. We won't let that happen. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll be here fighting alongside you every single day, every single setback. I'm not going anywhere. Adrian leaned against her, letting himself fall apart in a way he hadn't allowed himself since Emily's funeral. Chloe held him, solid and steady, while he cried for his daughter's suffering and his own helplessness, and 3 years of accumulated grief he'd never properly processed. Eventually, the tears stopped. Adrian pulled back, wiping his face roughly. Sorry, that was human, Chloe interrupted. That was human and necessary, and nothing to apologize for. His phone buzzed. Text from Dr. Chen. Modified protocol ready. We try again Thursday. Sophie's reaction tells me her immune system is very active. That's actually a good sign. We just need to approach it more carefully. Adrian showed the text to Chloe. She read it and nodded. See? Thursday. 3 days to recover, then you try again. And if Thursday is another disaster, then we regroup and try again. That's what fighting looks like. It's not one dramatic victory. It's showing up over and over until something works. Adrian looked towards Sophie's room, where his daughter slept surrounded by stuffed animals and hope, and the kind of courage that made his own seem insignificant. 82%, he said quietly. 82%, Chloe confirmed. We haven't lost yet. We're just learning how to win. Tuesday morning, Sophie woke up screaming. Adrian was at her bedside in seconds, finding her tangled in sheets and sobbing with a terror that went beyond physical pain. He gathered her into his arms while Chloe appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled from sleep. Nightmare? Chloe asked quietly. Sophie shook her head against Adrian's chest. It wasn't a dream. I remembered. Monday. All of it. How bad it was. And we have to do it again on Thursday. We don't have to do anything, Adrian said firmly. If you don't want to try again, we stop. We find something else. But there isn't anything else, Sophie's voice cracked. Dr. Chen's treatment is the best option. You said so. Everyone said so. There's always another option. Even if that option is going home and spending whatever time we have just being together, living instead of fighting. Sophie pulled back to look at him, her face blotchy and confused. You mean give up? I mean choosing quality over quantity. I mean deciding that maybe we've asked enough of your body, that maybe it's okay to stop hurting you in the name of saving you. Chloe moved into the room, sitting on the edge of Sophie's bed. Your dad's right. This is your choice, Sophie, not the doctor's, not your dad's. Yours. What do you want? Sophie was quiet for a long time. Mr. Elephant clutched tight against her chest. When she finally spoke, her voice was small but steady. I want to try again, but I'm scared it'll be like Monday. It might be, Adrian said honestly. Dr. Chen adjusted the protocol, but there's no guarantee. It could still be hard. But what if it works this time? What if Thursday is the day everything changes? Sophie looked between them. I don't want to give up because I'm scared. That's not... Mom wouldn't have done that. Adrian felt his throat close. Your mom was the bravest person I ever knew, but she would want you to be honest about what you can handle. She'd want you to choose what feels right for you. Then I choose to try again. Sophie's jaw set in that determined way that was pure Emily. One more time. And if it doesn't work, then maybe we talk about going home. But I have to try. Thursday arrived wrapped in crystalline cold, the kind of bright winter morning that felt too cheerful for what lay ahead. Adrian had barely slept, spending most of Wednesday night researching backup plans, other trials, experimental protocols, anything that might be plan C if Thursday failed. Chloe had stayed the entire week, working remotely from the apartment and handling logistics Adrian couldn't focus on. She'd arranged for meals, managed calls from concerned family members, and sat with Sophie during the hours when Adrian needed to fall apart privately. Now she stood at the door as they prepared to leave, pressing something into Adrian's hand, a small card with a phone number written on it. My cell. If anything goes wrong, if you need me there, you call. I don't care what time it is. I'll be there in 15 minutes. You've already done so much. Adrian, stop. Just take the card and promise me you'll use it if you need to. He pocketed the card. Thank you for everything, for showing up when you didn't have to. I showed up because I wanted to, because you and Sophie matter. Chloe pulled him into a quick hug. Now go. Dr. Chen's waiting. And remember, 82%. The treatment center felt different this time. Less hopeful, more ominous, like a battlefield they'd already lost once. Sophie's hand trembled in Adrian's as they checked in, as they were led to the same room where Monday had gone so wrong. Dr. Chen was waiting, and she didn't waste time on false optimism. All right, Sophie, here's what's different today. We're starting with half the dosage we used Monday. We're administering it over 6 hours instead of 4, and we've pre-medicated you with stronger anti-nausea and anti-inflammatory drugs. Your body's response Monday told us it's very reactive, which is actually good for fighting the tumor. We just need to ease into it more gently. What if it doesn't work? Sophie asked bluntly. Then we adjust again. We keep adjusting until we find the right balance. Science is about iteration, Sophie. Monday wasn't a failure. It was data collection. Dr. Chen's expression softened. I know Monday was awful, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Sophie looked at Adrian. He squeezed her hand gently, leaving the choice to her. Okay, Sophie said finally. I trust you. The first hour passed in tense silence. Adrian watched every monitor, every flicker of Sophie's expression, waiting for the reaction that would mean another disaster. But Sophie stayed calm, drowsy from the pre-medication, but not distressed. Hour 2 brought mild nausea, manageable, nothing like Monday's violent response. The nurses adjusted medications, Dr. Chen checked in, and Sophie dozed fitfully while holding both Captain Courage and Mr. Elephant. By hour 3, Adrian allowed himself to breathe slightly easier. Sophie was handling it. Not easily, not comfortably, but she was handling it. Dad? Sophie's voice was drowsy. I can feel it, like Monday, but different. Not as angry. Angry? Monday felt like my body was fighting the medicine, like everything inside me was screaming at it to stop. She paused, searching for words. Today feels like my body's listening instead of fighting. Does that make sense? Adrian looked at Dr. Chen, who was reviewing Sophie's monitors with an expression that might have been cautious optimism. That makes perfect sense, Dr. Chen said. Monday, we came at your immune system too aggressively. It went into defense mode. Today, we're introducing the treatment more slowly. Your body's learning to work with it instead of against it. So it's working? Your vitals suggest you're tolerating it well. We won't know if it's working on the tumor until we do scans next week. But this, she gestured to the monitors. This is exactly what we want to see. Sophie closed her eyes, a small smile on her pale face. 82%, she whispered. The treatment finished at 2 in the afternoon without major incident. Sophie was exhausted and nauseated, but nothing like Monday's crisis. Dr. Chen kept them for observation for an hour, then cleared them to leave with strict instructions and a schedule for the next treatment. Monday, same time, Dr. Chen said. And Sophie? You did great today. Really great. In the shuttle back to the apartment, Sophie leaned against Adrian's shoulder, drained but peaceful. That wasn't so bad, she murmured. I mean, it wasn't fun, but it wasn't Monday. No, Adrian agreed. It definitely wasn't Monday. Chloe was waiting with soup and crackers and relief written plainly across her face when they walked in. She took one look at Sophie, tired but smiling weakly and visibly relaxed. Good day? Better day, Adrian corrected. She handled the modified protocol. Of course she did. She's tougher than the rest of us combined. Chloe helped Sophie to the couch, getting her settled with blankets and the TV remote. How about we watch something mindless and eat soup? I'm thinking terrible reality TV. Can we watch the one about the people building tiny houses? Sophie asked. I like seeing how they fit everything in small spaces. Perfect choice. While Sophie zoned out to tiny house transformations, Adrian stepped into his bedroom and finally let himself fall apart. The relief was overwhelming. Not just that Thursday had gone better, but that Sophie had been right to push for trying again. That her courage had been rewarded with progress instead of more suffering. His phone buzzed, text from his sister. How'd today go? Better. So much better. She handled it. Thank everything. I've been worried sick. Me too, but she's okay. We're okay. I'm coming to visit next week. Already booked the flight. Don't argue. Adrian smiled despite his exhaustion. Wouldn't dream of it. He returned to the living room to find Sophie asleep on the couch, Chloe gently extracting the remote from her hand. She lasted about 15 minutes, Chloe said quietly. Poor kid's wiped out. Adrian carried Sophie to bed for the second time that week, tucking her in with her growing army of protective stuffed animals. When he returned, Chloe had poured 2 glasses of wine and was sitting on the couch looking thoughtful. What? Adrian asked, accepting the glass. I've been thinking about Monday, about how you offered to stop everything if that's what Sophie wanted, to just go home and live instead of fight. I meant it. If she'd said yes, we'd be packing right now. I know you meant it. That's what made it remarkable. Chloe took a sip of wine. Most parents would push, would say you have to keep fighting, you can't give up. But you gave her the choice, even knowing it might mean less time with her. Because it's her life, her body. She's the one suffering through treatments. She should get to decide if the suffering is worth it. 9 years old and you're giving her that kind of autonomy? 9 years old and she's been making life and death decisions for 3 years. She's earned the right to decide what she can handle. Adrian stared into his wine. Emily and I, we didn't get that choice. By the time we knew she was sick, it was too late for decisions. There was only one path, and we had to take it. I won't do that to Sophie. Won't force her to suffer just because I'm not ready to let go. Chloe was quiet for a long moment. You're a better person than most people realize, including yourself. I'm just a dad trying not to screw up too badly. No. You're someone who understands that love sometimes means letting go, that fighting isn't always the brave choice. Sometimes surrender is. She set down her wine glass. That's what I learned from meeting you. That real strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and still showing up. It's about being honest enough to admit when you don't have answers. Is this going somewhere? Yeah, it's going to me saying thank you for changing how I see the world, for showing me what actually matters. Chloe met his eyes directly. I spent years chasing success that meant nothing, building a career on stepping over people I decided weren't worth my time. And then I tried to step over you, and you were so much better than me, better than I thought anyone could be. Chloe, let me finish. I'm here because I want to be, because helping Sophie, supporting you, this is the first time in my life I felt like what I'm doing actually means something. And I want you to know that whatever happens with the trial, however this turns out, I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. Adrian felt something shift in his chest, the last wall he'd been holding up crumbling. Okay, he said quietly. I think I can live with being stuck with you. They sat together in comfortable silence, drinking wine while Sophie slept and the apartment settled into evening quiet. Outside, Boston carried on with its normal chaos. oblivious to the small battles being fought in medical residential buildings across the city. Adrian's phone buzzed again. Email from Dr. Chen with Sophie's preliminary blood work results from Thursday's treatment. He opened it with the familiar dread of medical news, but the message was surprisingly positive. Early markers look good. Her immune response is strong and targeted. Exactly what we want to see. We'll know more after Monday's treatment and next week's scans, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Cautiously optimistic. In the world of cancer treatment, that was practically a celebration. The next week blurred into a rhythm that became almost normal. Treatment on Monday. Sophie handled it even better than Thursday. Minimal nausea. Stable vitals. Treatment on Friday. She slept through most of it, woke up tired but not destroyed. Between treatments, Chloe took Sophie to the aquarium like Dr. Chen had suggested. They came back with stories about sea otters and penguins, Sophie more animated than Adrian had seen her in months. Rachel arrived on Wednesday, bringing chaos and maternal concern and enough food to feed them for 2 weeks. She took one look at the apartment, at Adrian's exhausted face, at Sophie's medical schedule on the refrigerator, and immediately took over the practical details Adrian had been neglecting. "You look terrible," she told him bluntly. "That's what Chloe said." "Because it's true. When's the last time you showered? Actually showered, not just stood under water for 30 seconds? I don't know. Tuesday? It's Friday. Go shower. Now. I've got Sophie." The scans came back on Thursday of the second week. Dr. Chen called them into her office with an expression Adrian couldn't read. Not quite smiling, but not the careful neutrality that preceded bad news. Sophie sat between Adrian and Chloe, squeezing both their hands so tight Adrian's fingers went numb. "All right," Dr. Chen pulled up images on her computer. "These are Sophie's scans from 2 weeks ago, before we started treatment. This," she pointed to a dark mass on the screen, "is the tumor." Sophie leaned forward, studying the image of the thing that had been trying to kill her for 3 years. "And this," Dr. Chen switched to a new image, "is from yesterday." The difference was visible even to Adrian's untrained eye. The mass was smaller, noticeably smaller. "It's shrinking," Sophie whispered. "It's shrinking," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Not dramatically, not a miracle cure, but measurable reduction after just 2 weeks. That's exactly what we want to see at this stage." "What does it mean?" Adrian's voice came out rough. "It means the treatment is working. Sophie's immune system is responding exactly how we hoped. It's recognizing the tumor cells and attacking them." Dr. Chen's expression finally broke into a real smile. "It means we're on the right path." Sophie looked up at Adrian, eyes wide with something that looked dangerously like hope. "Does this mean I might get better? Really better?" "It's too early to say for certain," Dr. Chen cautioned. "We need to continue treatment for several more weeks, keep monitoring progress." "But yes, Sophie, this is real progress, the kind that leads to remission." Adrian couldn't speak, couldn't process the weight of that word, remission. 3 years of fighting and failing, and suddenly there was this, measurable proof that Sophie's body could win. Chloe's hand found his, squeezing tight. 82%, she whispered. Later, back at the apartment, Rachel cooked a celebration dinner while Sophie showed her scans to her stuffed animals, explaining in serious detail how her immune system was learning to fight better. Adrian stood in the kitchen doorway watching his daughter, still pale, still thin, still fighting, but for the first time in 3 years, winning. "She's going to make it," Rachel said quietly, chopping vegetables with fierce precision. "I can feel it. She's going to beat this thing." "Don't," Adrian said quickly. Don't say that yet. We're only 2 weeks in. Anything could still go wrong. Or everything could go right. You ever consider that?" Rachel pointed the knife at him. "You've spent 3 years preparing for the worst. Maybe it's time to believe in the best." "I'm afraid to. Afraid if I hope too hard, it'll get taken away." "That's not how hope works. Hope doesn't jinx anything. It's not magical thinking. It's just choosing to believe good things are possible." Rachel went back to chopping. "Sophie believes. That kid has more faith in a positive outcome than anyone I've ever met. Maybe trust her instincts." Adrian thought about Sophie in Dr. Chen's office, seeing her tumor shrinking and immediately asking if it meant she could get better. No hesitation, no protecting herself from disappointment. Just pure, uncomplicated hope. Maybe his 9-year-old daughter understood something he'd forgotten. Treatment continued. Week 3, week 4, week 5. Each scan showed continued improvement, slow, steady, undeniable progress. Sophie's energy increased. Her color improved. She started eating full meals again, complaining about being bored between treatments instead of being too sick to care. Chloe flew back to California after 2 weeks, but returned every Friday, spending long weekends helping with whatever needed doing. She and Rachel formed an unlikely alliance, tag-teaming meal preparation and Sophie entertainment while Adrian attended appointments and managed medical logistics. By week 6, Dr. Chen was using words like remarkable response and exceptional progress. The tumor had shrunk by 40%. Sophie's immune markers were strong. Her body had not only accepted the treatment, but thrived on it. "I want to extend the protocol," Dr. Chen told them during the week 7's check-in. Another 4 weeks past the original 8-week plan. "The response is so strong, I think we can push for complete remission." "Complete?" Adrian repeated carefully. "I can't guarantee it, but if we keep seeing progress like this, yes, complete remission is a realistic goal." Sophie looked up at Adrian with those serious eyes. "More time in Boston, more treatments. Are you okay with that?" It was exactly like her, 9 years old and checking if her father could handle more disruption to their lives, as if her getting better wasn't the only thing that mattered. "I'm okay with whatever gets you healthy," Adrian said firmly. "If that's 4 more weeks, 4 more months, 4 more years, we stay." "Okay, then we stay." Week 8 arrived on a Friday in mid-December. Snow fell outside the treatment center windows while Sophie dozed through her final scheduled session. Rachel had flown back to California the week before, promising to return for Christmas. Chloe sat beside Adrian, working on her laptop while occasionally glancing at Sophie to make sure she was comfortable. "You know what's weird?" Chloe said quietly. "What?" 2 months ago, I was a person who judged people based on their appearance, who thought success meant money and status. Who would have walked past you and Sophie without a second thought? She closed her laptop. "Now I can't imagine my life without you in it. Both of you." "People change," Adrian said simply. "Not usually this much. Not this fast." Chloe turned to face him fully. "You changed me, Adrian. You and Sophie. You made me want to be better than I was. We didn't do anything except exist." "Exactly. You existed with such grace and strength and honesty that it made me ashamed of who I'd been, made me want to be someone worth knowing." She paused. "I know this is probably terrible timing and maybe completely inappropriate, but I need to say it. I've fallen for you. Not because you're some perfect saint, you're stubborn and you don't take care of yourself and you're terrible at asking for help. But you're real. You love Sophie with this fierce, protective intensity that makes me believe in good people again." Adrian stared at her, processing words he hadn't expected and definitely wasn't prepared for. "Chloe, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know that you matter to me, that whatever happens next, with Sophie's treatment, with your lives, with anything, I want to be part of it, if you'll let me." Before Adrian could respond, Sophie stirred, opening her eyes slowly. "Are you guys having a moment? Because the timing seems weird. I'm literally hooked up to an IV right here." Chloe laughed, breaking the tension. "How much did you hear?" "Pretty much all of it. You're not quiet." Sophie smiled sleepily. "For what it's worth, I think you should say yes, Dad. Chloe's great, and you smile more when she's around." "Oh, well, if my 9-year-old daughter approves," Adrian started, but Sophie interrupted. "I'm almost 10, and I'm very wise for my age. Dr. Chen said so." "Dr. Chen said you're very brave. That's different from wise." "I can be both." Sophie's eyes were already closing again. "Say yes. She flew across the country like 50 times to help us. That's proof she actually cares." After Sophie fell back asleep, Adrian and Chloe sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Adrian spoke. "I haven't thought about dating since Emily died. Haven't wanted to. Couldn't imagine letting someone that close again." "I understand, and if it's too soon, let me finish." Adrian took her hand. "I couldn't imagine it until you showed up and refused to leave and made yourself essential to our lives without asking permission. You're right that I'm stubborn and terrible at asking for help, but somehow you figured out how to help anyway, how to matter. So is that a yes?" It's a let's see where this goes. It's a Sophie's treatment comes first, but I'm willing to figure out how you fit into our lives. It's a Chloe kissed him, gentle and brief. That's good enough. The final scans came back on December 23rd. Dr. Chen called them into her office, and Adrian's heart hammered with the old familiar dread despite 12 weeks of good news. Sophie sat between Adrian and Chloe again, but this time she wasn't squeezing their hands in fear. She was calm, confident in a way that suggested she already knew what Dr. Chen would say. Complete remission, Dr. Chen announced without preamble. The tumor is gone, completely undetectable on current imaging. The words didn't fully land at first. Adrian heard them, understood them intellectually, but couldn't quite connect them to reality. Gone? He repeated stupidly. Gone. We'll need to continue monitoring. Remission doesn't mean cured, and there's always risk of recurrence. But right now, today, Sophie is cancer-free. Sophie looked up at Adrian with Emily's eyes and her own brave smile. We did it, Dad. We're in the 82%. Adrian pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, while trying not to completely fall apart in Dr. Chen's office. 3 years of fighting, 3 years of watching his daughter suffer, 3 years of wondering if they'd run out of options, and they'd made it. She'd made it. Chloe's hand was on his back, steady and grounding. Dr. Chen was saying something about follow-up schedules and monitoring protocols, but Adrian could barely hear over the roaring in his ears. Cancer-free. His daughter was cancer-free. They left the hospital in a daze. Sophie chattered excitedly about calling Rachel and telling her stuffed animals and maybe getting ice cream even though it was snowing. Chloe made quiet plans for celebration dinners and coordinating their return to California. Adrian just walked, holding Sophie's hand, trying to process that the nightmare might actually be over. That night, after Sophie was asleep and Chloe had gone back to her hotel, Adrian sat alone in the apartment and let himself cry. Not the desperate, helpless tears of watching his daughter suffer, but the overwhelming relief of having survived, of having gotten her through to the other side. His phone buzzed. Text from Chloe. You okay? Yeah. Just processing. Want company? Actually, yes. She arrived 20 minutes later with hot chocolate and an understanding expression. They sat together on the couch, and for the first time in 3 years, Adrian allowed himself to believe that maybe the worst was behind them. What are you thinking? Chloe asked. That Emily should be here for this. That she should get to see Sophie healthy and whole. That it's not fair she fought so hard and didn't make it, but Sophie did. Life isn't fair, but that doesn't make Sophie's victory less meaningful. I know, I wish Emily could see her, could see how strong she's been, how brave. I think she can, Chloe said softly. Not literally, but in the way Sophie fights, in the way she faces fear with courage Emily taught her. Your wife is in every strong choice Sophie makes. Adrian thought about that, about Emily's strength living on through their daughter, about how love didn't end just because someone died. You would have liked Emily, he said. She would have liked you too, would have appreciated how you showed up when I couldn't ask for help. I wish I could have met her, but I'm grateful I got to meet you and Sophie. Chloe leaned against him. I'm grateful for that terrible day in the airport when I was my worst self and you were gracious anyway. I wasn't gracious, I was exhausted and irritated. You were human, real. That's what made me see how wrong I'd been about everything. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking hot chocolate while Boston slept outside their windows. Tomorrow they would start planning their return to California. Tomorrow they would begin the process of rebuilding a life that didn't revolve around treatments and hospitals. Tomorrow would be about figuring out what normal looked like for a family that had forgotten how to be anything but fighters. But tonight was about sitting with the impossible reality that Sophie had made it, that after 3 years of war, they'd won. They flew home on January 2nd. Sophie bounced in her airplane seat, giddy with freedom and health and the knowledge that they were leaving Boston's medical residential building behind. Can we get a dog when we get home? She asked. What? Adrian blinked at the non sequitur. A dog. I've always wanted one, but we were always too busy with treatments and hospitals. But now we're not busy. So can we get a dog? Adrian looked at Chloe, who was trying not to laugh. I think that's a conversation for when we're not on a plane. Is that parent speak for no? It's parent speak for we'll discuss it later. That's definitely parent speak for no. Sophie slumped dramatically. Fine. But I'm going to keep asking. Dr. Chen said persistence is a valuable trait. Dr. Chen was talking about treatment protocols, not convincing your father to get pets. Persistence is persistence. Their house looked exactly the same, but somehow completely different when they pulled up 3 hours later. The porch light was still burned out. The lawn needed mowing. Everything was exactly as they'd left it 3 months ago. But everything had changed. Sophie ran inside, racing from room to room like she was rediscovering a place she'd forgotten. Adrian stood in the doorway with their luggage, watching his daughter, healthy, energetic, alive, claim space in a house that had been waiting for her return. Chloe's hand found his. "You did it," she said quietly. "You got her home. You got her healthy. We did it. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." Rachel showed up an hour later with enough food for a week and tears streaming down her face when she saw Sophie. "You look amazing," she managed between sobs. "I know." Sophie was practically vibrating with energy. "And I'm going to start real school again. Dr. Chen said I can do whatever I want now, within reason, whatever that means." "It means no skydiving," Adrian called from the kitchen. "I wasn't going to skydive. I was thinking more like soccer or theater, or maybe both." Over the next few weeks, life settled into something approaching normal. Sophie started back at school, overwhelmed at first by the noise and chaos, but gradually finding her rhythm. She made friends, joined drama club, pestered Adrian relentlessly about getting a dog. Adrian returned to work part-time, easing back into a routine that didn't revolve around medical appointments. His company was understanding, grateful to have him back, willing to be flexible about his schedule. Chloe visited every other weekend, the relationship between them evolving slowly from crisis-forged connection into something real and lasting. She was patient with Adrian's occasional withdrawal, understanding when memories of Emily made him need space, present when he needed someone to share the weight. 3 months after returning home, on a Saturday afternoon in April, Adrian stood in the backyard watching Sophie play with the rescue dog they'd finally agreed to adopt. A scruffy mutt named Charlie who'd been at the shelter too long and bonded with Sophie immediately. Rachel and Chloe were setting up a birthday party, Sophie's 10th, the one Adrian hadn't been sure she'd live to see. The yard was decorated with streamers and balloons, and the guest list included a dozen kids from school who thought Sophie was the bravest person they'd ever met. "You know what I realized?" Chloe said, coming to stand beside him. "What's that?" "That day in the airport when I tried to make you leave the cafe, I was operating from this assumption that worth was determined by external markers. Money, status, appearance. And then I met you and Sophie, and I realized I'd been measuring everything wrong. We've had this conversation before." "I know, but I keep coming back to it because it matters. Because you taught me that real strength isn't loud or visible. It's quiet, enduring. It's showing up day after day for people you love, even when it's impossible, even when you're breaking." She turned to face him. "You saved Sophie's life by refusing to give up. But you also changed mine by showing me what actually matters." Adrian watched Sophie throw a ball for Charlie, her laughter ringing across the yard. "I think we saved each other. You showed up when I'd forgotten how to let people in, when I thought I had to do everything alone. And now? Now I know that accepting help isn't weakness, that community matters, that letting people care about you is actually the bravest thing you can do." The doorbell rang, the first guests arriving for the party. Sophie abandoned Charlie and ran toward the house, shouting for Adrian to come meet her friends. Chloe squeezed his hand before heading to help Rachel with the food. Adrian stood in the backyard for one more moment, taking in the scene that would have been impossible 3 years ago. His daughter, healthy, happy, whole, celebrating a birthday he'd been terrified she wouldn't reach. Friends and family gathered not for a funeral but for joy. A future that looked bright instead of desperately uncertain. The journey from that airport cafe to this backyard had been brutal, full of suffering and fear and moments when giving up seemed like the only rational choice. But they'd made it through. Not perfectly, not without scars, but they'd survived. And maybe that was the point. Not perfection, not some triumphant narrative where everything worked out exactly right. Just survival. Just showing up day after day and refusing to let the hard things win. Sophie appeared at the back door. "Dad, come on, everyone's asking for you." "Coming, sweetheart." He took one last look at the yard. at the decorations and the rescue dog and the life they were rebuilding, then went to join his daughter's birthday party. Later, after the cake was eaten and the guests had gone home and Sophie was asleep surrounded by new birthday presents, Adrian sat on the front porch with Chloe and Rachel, the three of them exhausted and content. "That kid of yours," Rachel said, shaking her head in wonder. 10 years old and already teaching all of us how to live. "She gets it from Emily," Adrian said. "The strength, the grace, the ability to face impossible things." "She gets it from both of you," Chloe corrected. "Emily's courage and your stubborn refusal to give up." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood settle into evening. Somewhere down the street, kids were playing basketball. A dog barked. Normal sounds of normal life. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Adrian said after a while. "That moment in the airport when you tried to make me move. How angry I was. How tired." "I was such an ass," Chloe muttered. "You were operating from incomplete information. We all do that. Make judgments based on what we think we see instead of what's actually true." Adrian looked at her. "But the remarkable thing is what you did after. How you recognized your mistake and worked to fix it. How you showed up and kept showing up. Most people don't do that. Most people don't get the chance to see how wrong they were. I did, and I couldn't unsee it." Rachel stood up, stretching. "I'm going to head home. Leave you two to your philosophical discussions. But Adrian?" She put her hand on his shoulder. "I'm proud of you, of how you fought for Sophie, of how you let people in when it was hard. Emily would be proud too." After Rachel left, Chloe and Adrian sat together on the porch, his arm around her shoulders, both of them watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "What happens now?" Chloe asked. "Now that the crisis is over and life is getting back to normal?" "I don't know. Figure out what normal means, I guess. Help Sophie adjust to being a healthy kid again. Try to remember how to exist without constant fear." Adrian pulled her closer. "Figure out what we are to each other when we're not in survival mode." "And what do you think we are?" Adrian considered this question seriously. "I think we're two imperfect people who found each other in the worst possible circumstances and chose to show up anyway. I think we're building something real from the wreckage of really hard times." "That's a pretty good answer." "I have my moments." They sat together while the night deepened around them, and Adrian thought about the long, strange journey from that airport cafe to this porch. About Sophie sleeping peacefully inside, her body finally free of the disease that had defined her childhood. About Emily, who wasn't here but whose love still shaped everything they did. About Chloe, who'd started as an adversary and become essential. Life wasn't perfect. Sophie would need monitoring for years, the threat of recurrence always hovering at the edges. Adrian's fear wouldn't disappear just because they'd won this battle, and the scars, physical and emotional, would take time to fade, if they ever did. But they'd made it. Through the impossible, through the unbearable, through 3 years of fighting that had nearly broken them. And they'd come out the other side changed but whole, exhausted but standing, scarred but stronger for it. The porch light flickered, the one that had burned out before they left for Boston. Adrian had finally replaced it last week, a small act of maintenance that felt symbolic, taking care of the small things now that the big crisis was managed, building a life instead of just surviving one. "Thank you," Adrian said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing us. Really seeing us, not just what you expected to see. For letting that change you. For showing up when you didn't have to and staying when it got hard." Chloe kissed his temple gently. "Thank you for letting me. For teaching me what strength actually looks like. For making me want to be better than I was." Inside, Charlie barked softly in his sleep. Sophie's bedroom light was still on. She'd probably fallen asleep reading again. Normal problems. Normal life. And after 3 years of war, normal felt like the greatest victory of all. "Come on," Chloe said, standing and pulling Adrian to his feet. "Let's go inside, check on Sophie, make sure she's actually asleep and not reading under the covers." "She's definitely reading under the covers." "Then we'll tell her lights out, and she'll pretend to comply while actually reading for another hour." "Sounds about right." They went inside together, closing the door on the night and the past, and everything that had brought them to this moment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Sophie's follow-up appointments, Adrian's return to full-time work, the ongoing process of healing and rebuilding. But tonight, they had this: a sleeping child, a new dog, a house full of hope, and the quiet certainty that they'd fought the hardest fight and won. Not perfectly, not without cost, but they'd won, and sometimes that was enough.